Take a moment to listen to the world around you right now. The hum of devices, the pull of notifications, the endless stream of information and demands. It's a symphony of distraction that so many of us have come to accept as normal. We live in an age of unprecedented noise, both outside and within, and it's easy to feel like stillness is a luxury we can no longer afford. But what if I told you that throughout history, some of the most resilient minds didn't just seek stillness, they weaponized it. They turned quietness into clarity, silence into strength, and in doing so, they found a way to remain unshaken, even when everything around them was falling apart. Centuries ago, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced wars, plagues, and political turmoil that would make our modern stressors seem almost trivial. Yet in his private writings, he reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That idea, that inner tranquility is possible even amid external chaos, wasn't just philosophical musing. It was a practiced discipline, a form of mental armor worn by those who understood that true resilience isn't about fighting the storm, but learning how to find calm within it. This is the overlooked power of stillness, not as an escape from life, but as a way to engage with it more fully, wisely, and courageously. In this video, we're going to explore how stillness became a secret weapon in the hands of history's most resilient minds. We'll unpack the Stoic principles that taught them how to detach from what they couldn't control, anchor themselves in the present moment, and cultivate a fortitude that no external circumstance could break. These aren't abstract ideas, they're practical tools that you can start using today to navigate the noise and pressure of modern life with more grace, purpose, and peace. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, distracted, or emotionally tossed about by circumstances, what you're about to discover might just change how you see strength itself. For the Stoics, stillness was never about doing nothing. It was about mastering everything within. This ancient philosophy completely redefines what it means to be still. It's not a passive state of zoning out or disengaging from the world. Instead, it's an intensely active practice of mental discipline, a conscious choice to take command of your own perceptions and reactions. The Stoics believed that while we can't always control the events that happen to us, we have absolute authority over how we interpret those events and how we choose to respond. This is where true power lies. It's about creating a space between a stimulus and your reaction, a moment of profound clarity where you decide what something means to you. This foundational idea is beautifully captured by the Stoic teacher Epictetus, who was born into slavery and yet became one of history's most influential voices on inner freedom. He wrote, "Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing." This is the core of the dichotomy of control. Stillness is the practice of turning your attention inward to that which is your own doing and releasing your grip on everything else. It's about conserving your mental and emotional energy for the battles. You can actually win the battles within your own mind. We can see this principle in action throughout history. Consider a great military general the night before a pivotal battle. The camp is bustling with activity, reports are coming in, the anxiety of his troops is palpable. His immediate impulse might be to make frantic last-minute adjustments, to try and control every single variable, but a Stoic-minded leader would understand the power of a deliberate pause. He would retreat to his tent for a moment of quiet reflection. In that stillness, he isn't hiding from his responsibilities. he is actively engaging with them on a higher level. He is separating the things within his control, his strategy, his own courage, his commands from the things beyond it, the weather, the enemy's movements, chance events. By doing so, he achieves a state of mental clarity that allows for better, more reasoned decisions. This same principle applies to us in our modern lives. It's the executive who takes 3 deep breaths before a high-stakes presentation, the parent who counts to 10 before responding to a child's tantrum, the student who centers themselves before an exam. In each case, that moment of stillness is a strategic withdrawal, not a retreat, allowing for a more powerful and effective advance. Think about your own life for a moment. Can you recall a recent stressful situation where everything felt chaotic and overwhelming? Maybe it was a difficult conversation, a looming deadline, or a sudden piece of bad news. What happened when you reacted immediately, driven by that first surge of emotion? Now, try to remember a time when you managed to hit the pause button, even for just a few seconds. When you took a breath and created that tiny sliver of space before you responded, what was different? That moment of stillness, however brief, is where your power resides. It's the difference between being a passive reactor to your circumstances and an active architect of your response. That is the Stoic foundation, the unshakable understanding that inner peace isn't something you find by avoiding life's storms, but something you build by learning to stand calmly within them. What if you could face chaos without being shaken by it? What if the very things that normally trigger your anxiety, a critical comment from your boss, a sudden financial setback, a plan that falls completely apart, simply lost their power to disturb your peace? This isn't about becoming emotionless or indifferent to the world. It's about mastering a profound skill the Stoics called cognitive detachment, the ability to observe events without becoming emotionally entangled in them. This practice is perhaps one of the most powerful tools for building resilience because it allows you to engage with life fully while protecting your inner stability. The Stoic philosopher Seneca explored this idea extensively in his letters, advising his friend Lucilius to avoid distress over things beyond his control. He wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. So much of our anxiety isn't about the actual event itself, but about the story we tell ourselves about it, the catastrophic predictions, the personal interpretations, the endless mental rehearsals of what might go wrong." Cognitive detachment is the practice of stepping back from that story, of seeing the event for what it is, a neutral occurrence, rather than for what our fears tell us it means. We see a powerful example of this in the life of Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't writing his meditations in a quiet library. He was on the front lines of brutal military campaigns along the Danube River, facing the constant threat of invasion, disease, and rebellion. The chaos around him was absolute, yet in the midst of that, he would retreat to his tent and write words to himself like, "The cucumber is bitter, then throw it out. There are brambles in the path, then go around. That's all you need to know." This is the essence of detachment in action. He wasn't ignoring the problems, he was refusing to add a layer of emotional drama to them. The bramble is simply a bramble. It's an obstacle to be navigated, not a personal injustice to be raged against. By detaching from the narrative of suffering, he conserved his mental energy for solving the actual problem at hand. He could address the crisis with clarity and effectiveness because his mind wasn't clouded by panic or despair. He observed the chaos without letting the chaos observe him. This skill is incredibly relevant today. Think about how we often react to a negative email. The event itself is just words on a screen, but we instantly attach a story to it. My colleague is disrespecting me. My work isn't good enough. This is going to lead to a huge conflict. We spin ourselves into a state of anger or anxiety before we've even taken a breath. Cognitive detachment would involve noticing the email, acknowledging the initial emotional spark it creates, and then consciously choosing not to fuel that spark into a fire. You observe the facts, a request for changes, perhaps a curt tone without buying into the imagined narrative behind it. This creates a space where you can then choose a rational response instead of an emotional reaction. It's the difference between firing off a defensive reply and writing, "Thanks for your feedback. Let's discuss this in our meeting tomorrow to find the best path forward." One approach escalates the situation, the other manages it with grace and professionalism. So where in your own life could practicing this form of detachment create more peace? It might be your relationship with the news cycle, where you feel compelled to constantly consume alarming headlines that you cannot change. It could be your attachment to a particular outcome at work, a promotion, a project success where tying your entire sense of worth to that result is causing immense anxiety. Or perhaps it's something as simple as your daily commute. Detaching from the narrative that traffic is a personal offense against you can transform that time from a stressful ordeal into a neutral period for listening to music or an audiobook. Identify one area where your emotional entanglement is causing you more suffering than the situation itself warrants. The goal isn't to stop caring, but to care from a place of centered strength rather than fragile dependence. By loosening your grip on the need for things to be a certain way, you ironically gain a far greater sense of control, the control over your own peace of mind, no matter what happens around you. How often do you find yourself physically in one place, but mentally somewhere else entirely? You're sitting at dinner with your family, but you're anxiously rehearsing a difficult conversation you have to have tomorrow at work. Or you're trying to fall asleep, but your mind is racing, replaying a minor embarrassment from 5 years ago as if it just happened. This mental time travel is a primary source of our anxiety, and the Stoics identified it centuries ago. They understood that a mind lost in the past is burdened by regret, and a mind fixated on the future is paralyzed by fear. The only place we can ever actually live, and the only time we ever truly have any agency over, is this very moment. Right now, Marcus Aurelius offered himself a powerful reminder about this, writing in his private journal, "Give yourself a gift, the present moment." For him, this wasn't just a nice sentiment, it was a command. He was reminding himself that outside of this exact second, everything else is just a memory or a speculation. We can't change what has already happened, and we can't guarantee what will happen next. The only thing we can ever truly manage is our actions and our judgments in the immediate now. This is the very heart of Stoic stillness, the deliberate anchoring of your attention to the current task, the current conversation, the current breath. It's about refusing to pay interest on debts to the past or take out loans of worry from the future. The present moment is the only real currency we have to spend. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who focused intensely on practical application, gave his students very clear instructions on this. He advised, confine yourself to the present. He wasn't telling them to be short-sighted or to ignore planning. He was teaching them to direct their mental energy with precision. You can plan for tomorrow, but do it today with your full focus on the act of planning itself. Once the plan is made, you release it. You don't carry the weight of it around, constantly worrying about its outcome. Your duty is only to the action directly in front of you. This is why this philosophy is so brilliantly practical for high-pressure situations. Think of a world-class athlete like a gymnast about to mount the balance beam. The outcome of the entire competition hangs in the balance. The crowd is watching. If her mind is on the gold medal, on the potential glory or the potential failure, she will falter. Her training is not just physical, it's mental. she has learned the Stoic art of confining her attention to the very next move, the feel of the beam beneath her feet, the positioning of her hands. Her entire universe shrinks to that 4-inch wide piece of equipment. That hyper-focused presence is what creates the conditions for excellence. It's not magic, it's a disciplined practice of stillness. This same principle applies to a musician on stage, a surgeon in the operating room, or a teacher leading a classroom. The pressure might be different, but the mental challenge is the same. The past is filled with notes already played. The future holds the final verdict of the critics, but the present contains only the next note to be played with perfection. The surgeon cannot afford to be thinking about a previous complication or the potential lawsuit. His entire being must be focused on the precise movement of his hands right now. That intense, single-pointed focus is a form of profound stillness. It creates a bubble of clarity amid the chaos, and it is from that place of calm presence that peak performance emerges. So what would it look like to bring this ancient Stoic weapon into your own modern life? The good news is that it doesn't require a meditation cushion or a silent retreat. It can start with something incredibly simple. I want you to try a small exercise today. Choose one routine, mundane activity. It could be washing the dishes, drinking a cup of coffee, or even just walking to your car. For just 5 minutes, commit to doing only that. When you wash the dish, feel the temperature of the water on your skin. Notice the texture of the sponge. Watch the soap bubbles form and pop. When your mind inevitably wanders to your to-do list or a problem you're solving, and it will, gently guide it back to the sensation of the dish in your hands. No scolding, no judgment, just a quiet return to the present task. In that simple act, you are not just washing a dish. You are training your mind. You are building the neural pathways that allow you to confine yourself to the present, to find a refuge of stillness not by escaping your life, but by fully inhabiting it, one single, manageable moment at a time. Stillness isn't escape, it's preparation for the storm. This is a crucial distinction that separates Stoic practice from mere avoidance or wishful thinking. The resilience the Stoics championed wasn't about building a higher wall to keep the world out. It was about forging an unshakable inner core so that when the world inevitably crashes in, you don't shatter. This inner fortitude is the bedrock of true resilience, and it is cultivated in the quiet, deliberate moments of stillness long before any crisis ever arrives. It's the mental toughness earned through daily practice, the emotional muscle memory that allows you to stand firm when everything else is falling apart. Marcus Aurelius, who faced down plague, war, and betrayal, knew this intimately. He wrote to himself, "You have within you a quietness and a sanctuary to which you can retreat at any time and be yourself." That sanctuary isn't a physical place, it's a state of mind built through consistent effort. It's the ability to access a place of calm and clarity, not because the situation is calm, but because you have done the work to become calm within yourself, regardless of the situation. We see this profound resilience embodied in figures throughout history who understood the weapon of stillness. Consider the Roman senator Cato the Younger, a staunch Stoic who became a symbol of unwavering principle. During a period of immense political corruption and violence, when others compromised their values for power or safety, Cato remained steadfast. His resilience wasn't a loud, aggressive defiance, but a quiet, immovable certainty in his convictions. He was prepared for adversity because he had already faced it within himself, in the stillness of his own mind. He had rehearsed hardship, contemplated loss, and fortified his spirit against the opinions and threats of others. His strength was not reactive, it was proactive, built in those daily moments of reflection and self-examination. This same principle echoes centuries later in the life of someone like Nelson Mandela. His 27 years of imprisonment could have broken his spirit and filled him with bitterness. Instead, he used that forced solitude not as a punishment, but as a preparation. In the stillness of his cell, he cultivated a resolve that would later astonish the world. He strengthened his mind, clarified his purpose, and forged the inner fortitude necessary to lead a fractured nation toward reconciliation without succumbing to hatred. His stillness was not passive. It was the active, disciplined cultivation of a resilience so powerful that it could endure decades of adversity and emerge not weakened but magnified. This kind of strength is available to anyone willing to build that inner sanctuary. It doesn't require a prison cell or a political crisis to practice. It happens in the small, everyday moments. It's the parent who remains calm and patient during a child's meltdown, not because it's easy, but because they have learned to access a still point within themselves amidst the chaos. It's the entrepreneur who receives devastating news about a failed investment and instead of panicking, takes a walk to clear their head, returning with a clear-eyed plan to pivot and rebuild. Their resilience is in their response, a response made possible by a foundation of inner stillness that allows them to process the shock without being defined by it. They bend without breaking because their center of gravity is low and firmly rooted within, not tossed about by every external wind. Think back to a significant challenge you have faced in your own life. It might have been a personal loss, a professional failure, or a period of great uncertainty. In that moment, what was your default response? Was it panic, fear, or a sense of being completely overwhelmed? Now, imagine how that same situation might have unfolded if you had been able to access a deep, pre-built reservoir of inner calm. Not a naive optimism that ignores the problem, but a grounded stillness that allows you to see the situation clearly, to separate the facts from the fear, and to choose your response from a place of strength rather than react from a place of panic. That is the power of Stoic resilience. It's the understanding that the storm will come for all of us. The work we do in the calm weather, the practice of stillness, the cultivation of our inner fortitude, is what determines whether that storm will wash us away or whether we will stand anchored, knowing that we have within us the quiet strength to endure it. Why would anyone choose discomfort voluntarily? It seems counterintuitive, almost irrational, to seek out hardship when our entire modern world is engineered for convenience and ease. But for the Stoics, this practice was a form of mental and emotional inoculation. It was a deliberate strategy to build immunity against the fear of adversity, and in doing so, to cultivate a deeper, more unshakable appreciation for the stillness and peace we already possess. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, was a profound advocate for this. He didn't practice poverty because he had to. He did it because he understood that comfort, when taken for granted, becomes a fragile cage. He advised, set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared? This is the brilliant logic behind voluntary discomfort. By willingly experiencing a small, controlled dose of hardship, you prove to yourself that you can handle it. You rob future adversity of its power to shock and terrify you. You realize that the thing you fear is not the event itself, but your own inability to cope with it, and by practicing, you build that very ability to cope. This isn't about masochism or denying yourself joy. It's about strategic training. A soldier doesn't wait for the battle to learn how to use their weapon. They drill relentlessly in peacetime so that their reactions become second nature. In the same way, the Stoic uses voluntary discomfort to drill their mind. When you consciously choose to be cold or hungry, or to go without something you rely on, you are not just enduring a minor inconvenience. You are actively strengthening your inner resolve, You are sending a powerful message to your deepest subconscious. I am in control. My well-being is not dependent on external conditions. I can choose my response, and I choose resilience. This practice directly fuels stillness because it systematically dismantles the anxieties that disrupt our peace. The fear of losing our job, our status, or our comforts creates a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety in the background of our lives. But when you have voluntarily gone without, even for a short time, that fear loses its grip. You know from direct experience that you can survive with less. That knowledge creates a profound and lasting sense of security that no market crash or unexpected bill can easily take away. We can integrate this ancient weapon into our modern lives in countless practical ways. It doesn't require moving into a barrel like the philosopher Diogenes. It can start with something as simple as a voluntary digital detox. Choosing to leave your phone in another room for an entire evening is a form of voluntary discomfort in our hyper-connected age. You will likely feel the pull of anxiety, the fear of missing out, the itch to check for notifications. Sitting with that feeling, observing it without giving in, is a powerful Stoic exercise in mastering your impulses and reclaiming your attention. Taking a cold shower is another classic modern application. For that first minute, every instinct in your body screams to escape the discomfort. But by choosing to stay, by regulating your breath and your mind, you are not just building physical resilience, you are training your mind to remain calm and directive in the face of a stressful stimulus. This is a microcosm of handling a crisis at work or a personal setback. The neural pathways you build by choosing stillness in the shower are the same ones you will call upon to choose stillness in a difficult conversation or a moment of panic. So I want to invite you to conduct a small experiment today. Identify one tiny, voluntary act of discomfort you can incorporate. It could be as simple as turning off the air conditioning in your car for a short drive and just noticing the sensation of the heat without complaining. It could be skipping your usual afternoon snack and observing the feeling of hunger without immediately satisfying it. It could be walking up the stairs instead of taking the elevator. The goal is not to punish yourself, but to practice. As you do it, pay close attention to what happens in your mind. Notice the initial resistance, the voice that says this is unnecessary or unpleasant. Then observe the shift that occurs when you realize you are okay. You are enduring it. You are, in fact, completely fine. That moment of realization where discomfort meets capability is where resilience is born. It is a direct, personal experience of your own inner strength, and it is one of the most effective ways to weaponize stillness against the fears that would otherwise dominate your life. Think about the last time someone cut you off in traffic or a colleague made a snide remark in a meeting. That immediate surge of heat, the tightening in your chest, the impulse to snap back or lay on the horn, it's a nearly automatic reaction. We're wired to respond to perceived slights and provocations with a defensive flair, believing that a strong reaction asserts our strength and protects our dignity. But the Stoics observed this human tendency and proposed a radically different, far more powerful approach. They understood that true strength isn't revealed in the heat of your reaction, but in the depth of your stillness. When someone throws a verbal punch, responding with calm composure isn't a sign of weakness. It's a strategic act of disarmament. You are essentially refusing to play the game by their rules. You deny them the very thing they are often seeking: a reaction, an escalation, evidence that they have gotten under your skin. By choosing stillness, you retain all the power. The insult, the provocation, only has the meaning and the impact that you assign to it. If you refuse to accept it as an injury, then it simply ceases to be one. This core Stoic principle is perfectly captured by the former slave and profound teacher, Epictetus. He taught that people are not disturbed by events, but by the views they take of them. He famously said, "Remember, it is not he who gives abuse or blows who affronts, but the view we take of these things as insulting. Therefore, when someone provokes you, it is your own opinion that is provoking you." This is a complete reframing of power dynamics. The provocateur is merely making a sound or performing an action. It is our own judgment that labels it an insult and our own choice to feel harmed by it. When we react with anger, we are essentially confirming their power over our emotional state. We are handing them the remote control to our inner peace. Stillness, in contrast, is the act of taking that remote back and keeping it firmly in our own hands. Marcus Aurelius continually reinforced this idea to himself during his reign, surrounded by plotters and critics. He wrote in his private meditations, "You take away most people's power to hurt you if you don't rush to judge what they've done." His stillness was a deliberate pause, a space between the event and his judgment where he could choose how to interpret it. He could decide that a critic's words were not an attack but merely noise, or perhaps even useful feedback if he chose to see it that way. His reaction was his alone to command. History provides us with powerful examples of leaders who wielded this Stoic weapon to navigate incredibly tense and dangerous situations. Consider the demeanor of Abraham Lincoln during the American Civil War, a period of unimaginable national division and personal vitriol. He was constantly attacked, mocked, and vilified by newspapers, political opponents, and even members of his own cabinet. Rather than responding to every provocation with public outrage or retaliatory action, he often chose a posture of calm silence. He was known to write sharp, angry letters to his critics, and then simply place them in his desk drawer, never to be sent. This was stillness in action. He felt the initial sting of the insult, the natural human urge to fire back, but he created a space for stillness to intervene. In that space, he could assess the situation strategically rather than emotionally. His unflappable poise wasn't a lack of feeling, it was a supreme discipline of feeling. It allowed him to keep his focus on the monumental task of preserving the Union, rather than being sidetracked by every petty insult. His stillness denied his adversaries the satisfaction of seeing him rattled and preserved his energy for what truly mattered. This practice is just as potent in our daily interactions. Imagine you're in a team meeting and a coworker dismisses your idea with a sarcastic comment. The automatic, ego-driven response is to defend yourself, to counterattack, to prove them wrong in front of everyone. This almost inevitably leads to a tense, unproductive conflict that derails the meeting and creates lasting animosity. Now, imagine applying a Stoic response. The comment lands, you feel the flush of embarrassment or anger, but instead of reacting immediately, you employ stillness. You take a breath. You remember Epictetus that the insult only exists if you accept it as one. You might simply nod calmly and say, "I appreciate the feedback. Let's table this and we can discuss the data behind my suggestion afterward." Or you might even choose to say nothing at all in the moment, refusing to engage in a public spat. This response is not passive, it is powerfully active. It de-escalates the situation immediately, demonstrates immense professional poise, and leaves the provocateur looking petty and reactive. You have controlled the frame of the interaction entirely through your stillness. So I want you to take a moment and mentally replay a recent provocation you experienced. It could be something as minor as a disrespectful comment from a stranger online, or as significant as a heated argument with a loved one. Play out the scene as it actually happened. Notice where your reaction took over. Now press rewind. Imagine yourself in that exact same situation. But this time you insert a moment of deliberate Stoic stillness. You feel the urge to react, but you pause, you breathe, you remember that your power lies not in your retaliation, but in your response. What could you have done or said differently from that place of calm? How might the entire interaction have shifted? This isn't about cultivating indifference. It's about cultivating an unassailable inner strength that chooses its battles wisely and never, ever surrenders its peace to someone else's bad behavior. Some of history's most resilient minds kept journals for a reason, and it wasn't just to record events, it was to process them. This nightly ritual of self-examination was a cornerstone of Stoic practice, a dedicated space for untangling the day's chaos and returning to a state of mental clarity and inner stillness. While Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is the most famous example, he never intended it for publication. It was his private workbook, a place to wrestle with his own flaws, reinforce his principles, and coach himself through the immense pressures of leading an empire. He would write, "You can discard most of the junk that clutters your mind, things that exist only there, and clear out space for yourself by examining his impressions each night." This process of writing was his method of clearing that mental clutter, of sifting through the events of the day to separate what was within his control from what was not, and to identify where he had allowed external noise to disturb his inner peace. It was a practice of active stillness, where the physical act of writing created a sacred pause for honest reflection. Seneca powerfully advocated for this same daily audit in his letters, emphasizing its role in cultivating a tranquil mind. He advised his friend Lucilius, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, aware of this habit that's now become mine, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." This quote captures the essence of the practice. It's a raw, unfiltered conversation with oneself conducted in the quiet of the evening. It's not about crafting a perfect narrative for an audience. It's about ruthless honesty in the pursuit of self-improvement. For Seneca, this wasn't a passive review but an active interrogation. He would ask himself, where did I let a provocation steal my stillness? When did I act out of vanity or fear rather than virtue? Did I spend my time on what truly matters? This nightly reckoning allowed him to close the books on the day's events, learn from his missteps, and consciously prepare to meet the next day with a clearer, more focused mind, free from the baggage of yesterday's unresolved tensions. The beauty of this ancient tool is its incredible adaptability to our modern lives. You don't need a parchment and quill. The medium is far less important than the intention. For some, a beautifully bound notebook and a favorite pen creates the right tactile, screen-free ritual that encourages focus. For others, a notes app on their phone or a dedicated journaling app like Stoic or Day One provides the convenience and consistency needed to maintain the habit. The key is to find a method that feels sustainable for you. The practice itself can be structured around a few simple, powerful questions derived directly from Stoic philosophy. You might ask yourself, what did I try to control today that was ultimately beyond my power? When did I respond with stillness instead of reaction, and what was the outcome? What is one thing I can do tomorrow to align my actions more closely with my values? This isn't about dwelling on failures. It's about recognizing patterns, celebrating small victories in self-mastery, and continuously refining your ability to navigate the world from a place of calm intention. I want to encourage you to try this practice for yourself for just 1 week. Think of it as a 7-day experiment in building your own inner sanctuary. Each night before sleep, take just 5 to 10 minutes to write. Don't worry about eloquence or length, focus on honesty. Specifically, pay attention to tracing your moments of stillness and your moments of turbulence throughout the day. When did you feel that calm, centered strength? Maybe it was when you took a deep breath before answering a stressful email. Note that down. What triggered the stress, and what did it feel like to choose a different response? Conversely, when did you lose your stillness? Perhaps you snapped at a loved one or felt a wave of anxiety about a future event. Write that down too, without judgment. Simply observe it. What was the underlying trigger? Was it a desire for control, a fear of being judged? This process of observation without self-criticism is where the real transformation happens. Over the course of a week, you will start to see your own mental and emotional patterns laid bare on the page. You'll begin to identify the specific thoughts and situations that most easily rob you of your peace, and in doing so, you gain the power to disarm them. This nightly journaling becomes your personal training ground, the quiet space where you actively forge the resilience and stillness that will serve you when you need it most. True strength isn't revealed when everything is going smoothly. It's forged in the fire of chaos, in that remarkable ability to remain balanced and clear-headed when everything around you is spinning out of control. This state of unshakable even-mindedness is what the Stoics called equanimity, and it represents one of the most powerful applications of stillness. It's not about suppressing your emotions or becoming a detached, unfeeling robot. Rather, it's about cultivating a profound inner stability that allows you to experience life's inevitable ups and downs without being violently tossed about by them. You feel the sting of disappointment, but it doesn't plunge you into despair. You enjoy success, but it doesn't inflate your ego into arrogance. Equanimity is the anchor that holds you fast in the center of the storm, allowing you to respond to events from a place of wisdom rather than simply react from a place of raw, untamed emotion. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who began his life as a slave, framed this idea with beautiful clarity. He taught that we are not disturbed by the events themselves, but by the view we take of them. His entire philosophy was built on this foundation, that our peace of mind is an internal project, completely independent of the chaos that might be swirling around us externally. He argued that if you are distressed by any external thing, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your own judgment about it, and this is a judgment you have the power to revoke at any moment. This is the core of equanimity, the conscious management of your own perceptions and judgments. It's the realization that while you cannot always control what happens to you, you retain absolute sovereignty over how you interpret what happens, and therefore how you allow it to affect your inner state. Marcus Aurelius, constantly navigating political intrigue and military campaigns, continually reminded himself of this truth. He wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." This isn't passive resignation, it's active, heartfelt acceptance. It's the choice to meet reality exactly as it is, without the added layer of emotional protest that causes so much of our suffering. He saw this harmonious acceptance not as defeat, but as the ultimate expression of strength and alignment with the nature of the cosmos. We can see this Stoic ideal embodied in the most high-pressure professions today. Consider an emergency room physician dealing with a mass casualty event. The scene is pure chaos. Alarms are blaring, people are shouting, blood is everywhere, and multiple lives hang in the balance. Panic is a natural human response to such overwhelming stimulus, but a great doctor has trained for this. Their equanimity is a professional necessity. They are not unaffected by the gravity of the situation. They are acutely aware of it, but they have mastered the art of compartmentalizing their own fear and anxiety, of setting those natural emotions to the side so they can focus with razor-sharp clarity on the triage process, the precise movements of an intubation, the calculated decision of which patient to treat first. Their inner stillness doesn't mean they don't care. It means they care so much that they refuse to let their own turbulent emotions get in the way of delivering life-saving care. The same principle applies to a pilot navigating severe turbulence or an emergency landing. Their voice remains calm and measured over the intercom, not because they are unafraid, but because their training has instilled a deep equanimity. They understand that their calm is contagious and that their own balanced response is the first and most important step in ensuring the safety and calm of everyone else on board. Their stillness is a weapon against the chaos. Now, bring this concept down to earth into your own daily life. You are almost certainly not performing emergency surgery or landing a plane, but you face your own versions of chaos every single day. It might be a sudden and stressful work deadline that lands on your desk at 4:45 in the afternoon, completely disrupting your plans for a peaceful evening. It could be a major family argument that erupts out of nowhere over something seemingly trivial. It might be a moment of financial panic when an unexpected bill arrives. In that moment, the Stoic question is, where is your anchor? What would it look like to respond with equanimity instead of panic or frustration? It starts with that crucial pause, the conscious insertion of a moment of stillness between the event and your reaction. In that space, you can ask yourself the Stoic questions. Is this event within my control? If not, my anxiety is pointless. If it is, what is the most virtuous and effective action I can take right now? By doing this, you shift from being a victim of circumstances to being an active participant in your response. So I want you to take a moment and identify one specific, recurring situation in your own life where a lack of equanimity tends to make things worse. Perhaps it's your daily commute, where every slow driver or traffic jam sends your blood pressure soaring. Maybe it's dealing with a particularly difficult and demanding person at your job, whose very presence seems to trigger your defensiveness. Or it could be the anxiety you feel when checking your investment portfolio during a market downturn. Picture that scenario clearly in your mind. Now, imagine yourself entering that same situation, but armed with the Stoic weapon of equanimity. What would change? How would your breathing be different? What would your self-talk sound like? How would your posture and your facial expressions shift? And most importantly, what different action would you take from that place of calm, balanced strength? This mental rehearsal is the first step in building a new default setting, one where your inner stillness remains unbroken, not because the world is peaceful, but because you have chosen to make your own mind a sanctuary of peace, regardless of the world. In our world of instant messaging and hot takes, the default setting seems to be react immediately. But the Stoics championed a far more powerful and strategic approach, the art of silent observation. This isn't about being passive or disengaged. It's about actively choosing to withhold your immediate judgment and emotional response in order to gain a clearer, more complete picture of what is truly happening. It's the disciplined practice of becoming a student of a situation before you attempt to become its master. By resisting the urge to label, judge, or retaliate in the heat of the moment, you create a space for wisdom to emerge. You allow yourself to see nuances you would have otherwise missed, to understand motivations that aren't immediately apparent, and to craft a response that is measured, effective, and entirely your own, rather than a reflexive product of someone else's provocation. Seneca, in his letters, offered brilliant advice on this very practice. He wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." He wasn't just talking about rage, he was talking about any strong initial impulse. That delay, that intentional pause, is the fertile ground where silent observation grows. It's in that space that you can switch from being a participant, swept up in the current, to an observer standing on the bank, watching the flow of the river. You can see the logs and the rocks beneath the surface that you would have crashed into had you jumped in immediately. This stillness allows you to separate the raw, unfiltered event, the facts, from the story your emotions are already trying to write about it. You might feel the sting of a criticism, but by observing silently, you can ask, is there truth in this? What is this person's underlying concern? Is this about me, or is it about their own frustration? This process of examination is what turns a potentially volatile reaction into a moment of profound learning and strategic advantage. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus gave us the precise mental tool for this. He taught his students to carefully examine their initial impressions before granting them assent. He said, "Don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say to it, 'Hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent.' Let me put you to the test. This is the ultimate weaponization of stillness. An impression, a rude email, a negative comment, a sudden change of plans hits your mind. Instead of that impression automatically triggering a cascade of anger, anxiety, or defensiveness, you intercept it. You hold it at arm's length and observe it silently. You treat it not as a command you must obey, but as a piece of data you must analyze. Is this impression within my control? Is it a true representation of reality, or is it a distortion? By subjecting every initial impression to this silent, observational cross-examination, you reclaim your sovereignty over your own mind. Your reactions become chosen responses, not automatic reflexes. We see this principle executed masterfully by some of history's most effective leaders. Abraham Lincoln was famous for his deliberate and often silent demeanor during cabinet meetings, especially during the immense pressures of the Civil War. He would frequently listen to his advisors argue and debate, some of them quite passionately and even disrespectfully toward him, without immediately interjecting his own opinion. He would absorb the information, observe the dynamics at play, and note the strengths and weaknesses of each argument presented. His silence was not a void, it was a powerful, active gathering of intelligence. By observing first, he gained a comprehensive understanding of the entire landscape of an issue before he ever committed to a course of action. This allowed him to make decisions that were remarkably well considered and to often synthesize the best points from various conflicting viewpoints. His stillness in the face of heated debate was a strategic tool that led to wiser, more resilient outcomes for a fractured nation. This art is something you can practice in your very next conversation. Most of us listen not to understand, but to prepare our rebuttal. We are already formulating our response while the other person is still speaking, which means we are only half hearing them at best. The practice of silent observation asks you to shift that dynamic entirely. For the next conversation you have, whether with a partner, a colleague, or a friend, make a conscious decision to become an observer. Your only job is to listen completely. Resist the urge to interject, to agree, to disagree, or to offer a solution. Just absorb. Pay attention not just to their words, but to their body language, their tone, and the emotions behind what they are saying. Notice the points where your own mind wants to jump in and defend or correct. Observe that impulse, but don't act on it. You will be astonished at what you learn. You might realize that the person isn't actually asking for a solution. They just need to be heard. You might detect an underlying fear or insecurity that explains their position. You might hear a flaw in your own logic that you would have otherwise missed because you were too busy talking. In that simple act of observational silence, you gain a depth of perspective that transforms communication from a battle of egos into a genuine exchange of understanding. Think about that flutter in your stomach before you have to give a big presentation, or the tightness in your chest when you imagine a project you've worked on for months failing spectacularly. Fear is a universal human experience, but the Stoics discovered a powerful secret. Fear doesn't live in the present moment. It thrives in the future, in the space of our imagination where we anticipate pain, embarrassment, or loss that hasn't actually happened yet. The anxiety we feel is almost always a response to a story we are telling ourselves about what might occur, not what is occurring right now. Stoic stillness, then, becomes the ultimate antidote to fear. It is the mental discipline of pulling your attention back from those terrifying future projections and anchoring it firmly in the reality of the present, where you are almost always safe, capable, and in possession of the resources you need to handle the next immediate step. This isn't about pretending the feared event isn't possible. It's about changing your relationship to that possibility. The Stoic approach involves turning toward the fear with a calm and rational mind, rather than trying to flee from it. Seneca provided a remarkably practical tool for this, a technique now known in cognitive psychology as premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. He advised, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. But the key is in how you do it. This isn't a frantic, anxious dwelling on everything that could go wrong. It is a calm, almost clinical exercise. You deliberately imagine the worst-case scenario, not to scare yourself, but to desensitize yourself to it and to prove to yourself that you could endure it. You walk yourself through the feared event in your mind from start to finish, and you visualize yourself navigating it with dignity, reason, and courage. By doing this in the stillness of your own mind, you rob the future of its ability to shock you. You realize that even in the worst outcome, you would still be you, and your character would remain yours to command. We see the profound power of this practiced stillness in the most extreme examples history has to offer. Consider the final hours of the philosopher Socrates, condemned to die by drinking poison hemlock. As described by his student Plato, Socrates spent his last moments not in panic or despair, but in calm, reasoned discussion with his friends about the nature of the soul and the possibility of an afterlife. When the time came, he drank the cup without trembling, his mind serene. This wasn't a lack of love for life. It was a supreme demonstration of a philosophy lived to its final breath. He had spent a lifetime practicing stillness and examining his impressions. He had already confronted the fear of death in his mind countless times and had reached a place of acceptance. His stillness in that ultimate moment was the final, powerful proof that our fears have no power over us unless we grant it to them through our assent. His peace was a choice made possible by a lifetime of mental training. This same principle, on a less dramatic scale, is available to you right now. That presentation you're nervous about, that difficult conversation you're avoiding, that financial uncertainty that keeps you up at night, these are your modern versions of the hemlock cup. They are opportunities to apply Stoic stillness. The next time you feel that familiar surge of fear, try this. First, pause and take a single, deep breath. This physically interrupts the stress response. Then, name the fear explicitly. Say it out loud. I am afraid my business will fail, or I am afraid I will look foolish in that meeting. Now, gently guide your focus away from the terrifying, abstract future and into the concrete present. What is one small, actionable step you can take right now that aligns with your values and moves you forward? It might be reviewing your notes one more time, drafting a single bullet point for the conversation, or creating a basic budget. Action in the present moment is the antidote to anxiety about the future. It shifts you from a passive victim of your imagination to an active participant in your own life. So I want you to take a moment and identify one specific fear that currently occupies space in your mind. It doesn't have to be a monumental one. It could be the fear of sending a particular email or making a phone call. Now apply the Stoic method. First, articulate the worst-case scenario calmly. What is the absolute worst thing that could realistically happen? Then ask yourself, could I survive that? Would I still be able to act with integrity? The answer is almost certainly yes. Finally, release that future projection and bring your entire attention back to this exact moment. What is one thing you can do right now that would be a constructive step regardless of the outcome? This process doesn't erase the challenge, but it does erase the paralyzing power of the fear around it. It allows you to move forward not because you are guaranteed success, but because you have discovered through stillness that you are strong enough to handle whatever may come. What if you could want only what is within your control? It sounds almost impossible, doesn't it? We spend so much of our lives chasing after things: approval from others, career success, financial security, the perfect relationship, and running away from other things: criticism, failure, discomfort, loss. This constant pursuit and avoidance creates a turbulent ocean of desire and aversion within us, where our peace of mind becomes entirely dependent on whether the world happens to give us what we want and spare us what we dislike. The Stoics looked at this human predicament and offered a radical solution: the discipline of desire. This isn't about suppressing your wants or becoming apathetic. It's about consciously redirecting your deepest desires toward the only things that can never be taken from you: your own character, your virtues, your judgments, and your actions. It's about wanting what you already have access to, which is the power to choose your response to any situation, no matter how challenging. This profound reorientation of our inner world is the central teaching of Epictetus's Enchiridion, a manual for practical living. He begins with that famous foundational statement: some things are up to us and some are not. But he goes much deeper, explaining that our happiness depends entirely on getting our wishes to align with this fundamental truth. He writes, happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle: some things are within our control and some things are not. It is only after you have faced up to this fundamental rule and learned to distinguish between what you can and cannot control that inner tranquility and outer effectiveness become possible. The key word there is wishes. Our suffering doesn't come from external events. It comes from our wishes being out of alignment with nature. We wish for a promotion that is not ours to grant. We wish to avoid an illness that may or may not come. We wish for others to think well of us, something entirely in their control. Each of these misaligned wishes is a setup for disappointment, anxiety, and a loss of stillness. The discipline is to train your wishes to flow only toward what is unequivocally yours: your integrity, your effort, your honesty, and your courage. We can see the power of this discipline most clearly in our relationship with material possessions. Think about the latest smartphone or a new car. There's nothing inherently wrong with wanting or having these things. The problem arises when our desire for them becomes a need, when our sense of well-being becomes tied to their acquisition or preservation. You work hard to buy a beautiful new car. For the first few weeks it brings you joy, but then that joy is slowly replaced by a low-grade anxiety. You worry about where you park it. A small door ding from a shopping cart feels like a personal tragedy. Your happiness has become hostage to the pristine condition of an object that is completely outside your ultimate control. It can be scratched, stolen, or totaled in an accident by someone else's mistake. Now contrast that with a person who practices Stoic desire. They may appreciate a nice car, but they do not need it for their happiness. Their primary desire is to act with wisdom and integrity, whether they are driving a new luxury vehicle or a 20-year-old hatchback. If the car gets damaged, they feel a natural annoyance. A preferred indifferent has been impacted, but their core peace remains unshaken because their true desire, their desire for virtue, is still perfectly intact. The accident did not touch what they truly value. This shift doesn't make you poor, it makes you psychologically free. This principle extends far beyond objects to our most deeply held aspirations. Consider the desire for a specific job title or a certain level of income. It is perfectly rational to work diligently toward these goals, but the Stoic disciplines their desire. They pour their energy and focus into the process, the effort, the learning, the quality of their work, all things within their control. They release their attachment to the outcome, the hiring manager's decision, the company's budget, the state of the economy, all things ultimately beyond their control. This realignment is liberating. You can walk into an interview and perform to the best of your ability, free from the desperate need to be chosen, because your self-worth is not on the line. Your desire was to act with confidence and competence, and you have already fulfilled that desire the moment you walk out the door, regardless of the result. This is how the discipline of desire builds stillness. It moves the finish line for your happiness from an uncertain external outcome to a guaranteed internal one. You are no longer waiting for the world to give you permission to be at peace. You grant it to yourself by wanting the right things. So where can you begin to apply this transformative discipline in your own life? The practice starts with awareness. I want you to take a moment and honestly identify one specific desire or aversion that currently disrupts your inner stillness. Maybe it's the intense desire for your project to be praised by your colleagues, an outcome that depends entirely on their subjective opinions. Perhaps it's a powerful aversion to having a difficult conversation with a family member, so you avoid it, allowing the anxiety to build. Write it down now, subject it to the Stoic test. Is this thing I want or want to avoid completely within my control? If the answer is no, then acknowledge that your current desire is misaligned and is therefore the source of your turbulence. The next step is to reframe it. Instead of desiring the praise, desire to do the most thorough, excellent work you are capable of. Instead of desiring to avoid the conversation, desire to handle it with as much kindness, honesty, and courage as you can muster. You will find that this simple act of reassessment doesn't weaken your ambition. It fortifies your spirit. It allows you to engage with the world passionately but without desperation, because you have already secured what you truly wanted, your own virtuous action, before the game has even ended. It's a common paradox that some of our most brilliant ideas don't arrive in the middle of frantic effort, but in the quiet spaces between, during a shower, on a walk, or just as we're drifting off to sleep. This is because creativity is not a force we can command through sheer willpower. It's a subtle insight that emerges when the constant chatter of our minds finally settles. The Stoics understood this phenomenon intimately, recognizing that the disciplined practice of stillness wasn't just a tool for resilience, it was a gateway to profound creativity and innovative thinking. By deliberately quieting the noise of external desires and internal anxieties, they cleared the mental space necessary for original ideas to surface and take root. In a world that often equates busyness with productivity, the Stoic practice of purposeful solitude becomes a revolutionary act, one that unlocks our innate capacity to see solutions and connections that were previously hidden by the clutter of a distracted mind. Seneca, in his letters, frequently extolled the virtues of withdrawing into oneself to find not only peace but also clarity and inspiration. He believed that constant external stimulation and social noise were the enemies of deep thought. In one powerful passage, he advises, "You must withdraw into yourself as much as you can. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving." The process is mutual, for people learn while they teach. For Seneca, this withdrawal wasn't about antisocial behavior. It was a strategic retreat to engage in the most important conversation of all, the one with oneself. It is in this dialogue, free from the need to perform or impress, that we can question our assumptions, challenge conventional wisdom, and entertain seemingly absurd ideas that might just hold the key to a breakthrough. This Stoic solitude creates the mental conditions for what we now call divergent thinking, where the mind is free to explore possibilities without the immediate pressure of a correct answer or a practical application. Marcus Aurelius, amidst the crushing weight of imperial duties, constantly retreated into his own inner citadel, a mental fortress of calm and resourcefulness. He viewed this inner world not as an escape but as a wellspring of strength and ingenuity. He wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if thou wilt ever dig." This beautiful metaphor captures the essence of creativity as an internal resource, not an external one. The digging is the work of stillness, the effort to silence the ego, to set aside the endless list of wants and fears, and to access a deeper layer of consciousness. From this placid inner depth, innovative ideas can bubble up naturally. The Stoic mind, untroubled by the fear of failure or the craving for approval, becomes a fertile ground for novel combinations and unconventional solutions because it is no longer constrained by the narrow paths of habitual thinking. History offers a compelling testament to this principle with the story of Sir Isaac Newton. During the Great Plague of London in 1665, Cambridge University sent students home to avoid the spread of the disease. Newton, then a young scholar, was forced into an extended period of isolation at his family estate. This period of quarantine, free from the distractions of university life and social obligations, became one of the most intellectually fertile times in human history. It was in this stillness that he developed his theories on calculus, conducted groundbreaking experiments with optics, and famously began formulating his law of universal gravitation after observing an apple fall in his garden. While the apple story may be apocryphal, the profound truth remains. Newton's forced solitude provided the uninterrupted mental space for his genius to connect dots that others couldn't even see. His experience is a powerful validation of the Stoic claim that when we still the waters of our mind, we can see all the way to the bottom where our most valuable insights reside. This creative power of stillness is not reserved for history's geniuses. It is a latent ability within all of us, waiting to be unlocked by intentional practice. The constant ping of notifications, the pressure to be constantly available, and the cult of busyness actively work against this deep, creative state. We are often so busy reacting to the world that we lose the capacity to truly reflect upon it and imagine how it could be different. The Stoic remedy is to schedule and fiercely protect moments of deliberate quiet. This isn't about laziness, it's about active incubation. It is in these moments that your subconscious mind, unburdened by a specific task, can work on the problems your conscious mind has been struggling with, often delivering the solution in a sudden flash of aha insight once you return to the work. So consider a challenge you are currently facing, perhaps a problem at work that seems to have no solution, a creative project that feels stuck, or a personal decision with no clear right answer. Instead of grinding away at it with increasing frustration, I want you to try a different approach. Schedule 20 minutes of pure, uninterrupted quiet time today. Go for a walk without your headphones, sit in a room with a notebook and pen, or simply gaze out a window. Tell yourself you are not going to force a solution. You are simply going to create the conditions for one to emerge. Let your mind wander freely around the edges of the challenge without judgment. You might be surprised at what arises from the silence. That fleeting thought you'd normally dismiss, that seemingly random memory, that odd connection between two unrelated things. This is the language of your innate creativity, and it speaks most clearly when the rest of the world is finally quiet enough to listen. It's a gentle but powerful truth that the very shortness of life is what makes our time, and the stillness we can find within it, so incredibly precious. The Stoics had a name for this conscious awareness, Memento Mori, a Latin phrase that translates to "remember you must die." At first glance, this might seem morbid or depressing, a practice fixated on the end. But when understood as the Stoics intended, it reveals itself as one of the most life-affirming and clarifying tools ever developed. This is not about cultivating a fear of death, but about using the certainty of our finite time as a powerful lens to bring our life into immediate, sharp focus. It is the ultimate catalyst for gratitude, urgency, and profound presence, stripping away the trivial and forcing us to confront what is truly essential. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire while being constantly reminded of his own mortality through war and illness, returned to this theme again and again in his private writings. He didn't use it to despair, but to prioritize. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." For him, this wasn't a threat, it was a liberating instruction manual. The awareness that today could genuinely be your last is not meant to fill you with panic, but to fill you with purpose. It asks a simple, piercing question. If this were it, would how I'm spending this moment right now truly matter? This philosophy finds one of its most eloquent voices in Seneca, who wrote extensively about the importance of valuing our time above all other possessions. In his moral letters, he counseled, "Begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life." This quote captures the essence of the practice perfectly. It's not about waiting for some distant future to become the person you want to be or to start living the life you desire. It's about treating this day, this very one you are in, as a complete life in itself, a closed loop of 24 hours to be lived with intention, virtue, and full engagement. When you truly internalize that today is a gift not guaranteed to be repeated, the mental clutter that so often disturbs our stillness simply evaporates. The frustration over a delayed train, the anxiety about a minor slight, the endless scrolling through social media fueled by a vague sense of FOMO, these things lose their grip on your attention. They are exposed for what they are, distractions from the breathtaking, finite reality that you are alive right now, with the capacity to experience, to love, to create, and to choose. Remembering that you will die one day doesn't diminish your life. It magnifies the stunning value of every single moment you are given. We can see the practical power of this reflection in countless everyday scenarios. Imagine you're stuck in a long, tedious line at the grocery store. The default reaction for many of us is impatience, irritation, and a mental rehearsal of all the more important things we could be doing. Now apply the lens of Memento Mori. You are alive. You have the capacity to feel the cool air of the store, to see the vibrant colors of the produce, to hear the fragments of conversation around you. The simple fact that you are here to experience this minor inconvenience is, in the grandest scheme of things, a miracle that will one day be unavailable to you. This shift in perspective doesn't make the line move faster, but it completely transforms your experience of it. The irritation melts away, replaced by a gentle, almost amused patience. Your stillness returns because you are no longer fighting against the reality of the present moment. You are embracing it as a part of the singular, irreplaceable day you have been given. On a larger scale, this practice can fundamentally reshape major life decisions. The fear of leaving a comfortable but unfulfilling job, for instance, often loses its power when held against the stark truth that your weeks and years are limited. The practice of Memento Mori asks, is this how I want to spend my precious and limited time? It creates a beautiful, urgent pressure to align your actions with your deepest values, because the clock is, quite literally, always ticking. So I want to invite you to try a brief but powerful thought experiment. Take a quiet moment, perhaps at the very start or end of your day, and truly sit with the idea that your life is finite. This isn't about being grim, it's about being real. Then ask yourself this: if I were to receive a definitive diagnosis and learn I had only 1 month left to live, what would immediately become unimportant? The pile of laundry, the petty argument you had, the perceived failure from 5 years ago, these would likely vanish into a cloud of utter insignificance. And then ask the more important follow-up: what would suddenly become blindingly important? Spending quality time with loved ones, expressing your true feelings, finishing a project that matters to you, or simply sitting quietly to watch a sunset. The clarity that emerges from this exercise is the entire point of Memento Mori. It's a tool for cutting through the noise of daily life to reveal the signal of your true priorities. It asks you to stop postponing your life and to start infusing your ordinary days with the focus, love, and presence you would naturally bring to your last ones. In doing so, you don't wait for death to teach you how to live. You use the awareness of it to start living fully, deeply, and with immense gratitude right now. The most effective leaders throughout history often share one counterintuitive trait: they aren't the loudest voices in the room, especially when everything is falling apart. They are the calmest, in the swirling vortex of a crisis where panic is contagious and pressure demands an immediate reaction. They possess a profound stillness that acts as an anchor for everyone around them. This isn't a passive calm, a simple absence of noise. It's an active, disciplined state of mental clarity. It is the cultivated ability to create a crucial space between a triggering event and their response, a pause where instinct is filtered through reason and fear is translated into focused action. This stillness is what prevents a bad situation from becoming a catastrophic one, transforming potential rash decisions into measured, effective judgments that consider the long-term consequences rather than just offering a short-term emotional release. This leadership principle is deeply rooted in Stoic philosophy. The Stoics understood that a leader's primary responsibility isn't to control unpredictable events, but to master their own perceptions and reactions to them. A turbulent mind sees only chaos and reacts to it. A still mind can see the patterns within the chaos and respond to them. Epictetus, whose teachings on personal agency have guided leaders for millennia, offered a simple but profound directive for this very purpose. He said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." This quote cuts to the heart of Stoic leadership. The saying to yourself is that moment of stillness, the internal recalibration where a leader reconnects with their core principles, their values, and their intended course before any external action is taken. It is in this quiet internal space that a leader decides what kind of person they will be in the face of this challenge, and only then do they determine what needs to be done. This process ensures that their actions are a reflection of their character, not a surrender to circumstance. We can see this Stoic composure embodied in figures like George Washington, who was known for his almost preternatural calm under extreme pressure. His leadership during the brutal winter at Valley Forge wasn't about flashy speeches or dramatic gestures. It was about his unwavering, steady presence. While his army was starving, freezing, and deserting in droves, Washington maintained his discipline. He wrote countless letters to Congress pleading for supplies. He organized the camp. He endured the same hardships as his men. His stillness wasn't an absence of worry or fear. It was the supreme management of it. He processed the immense stress internally through his Stoic-influenced resolve, and projected a calm determination that became the very foundation of his army's will to survive. His ability to prevent a rash decision, like launching a desperate and doomed attack on the British, and instead focus on the slow, grueling work of training and fortification, ultimately saved the Continental Army and the American cause. His leadership was a testament to the idea that stillness is not inaction. It is strategic, purposeful action born from a mind that has refused to be hijacked by panic. This ancient practice is more relevant than ever in our modern boardrooms and offices. Today's leaders face a different kind of siege, not of muskets and cold, but of incessant notifications, information overload, and the constant pressure to make swift decisions in a complex global landscape. It's no coincidence that many of the most respected contemporary executives and innovators have incorporated formal practices of stillness into their daily routines. Former Microsoft CEO Bill Gates is known for his Think Weeks, where he isolates himself twice a year to read and reflect deeply, away from the daily operational noise. Salesforce founder Mark Benioff has integrated mindfulness zones into his company's offices. These aren't just wellness perks, they are strategic tools. These leaders understand that the quality of their decisions is directly proportional to the clarity of their minds. By deliberately carving out space for stillness, they are able to rise above the frantic churn of tactical concerns and access the strategic, big picture thinking that truly defines transformative leadership. They are practicing the modern equivalent of a Stoic retreat, creating the mental conditions for wisdom to emerge. Now, bring this concept down from the monumental to the personal. You may not be commanding an army or running a Fortune 500 company, but you are the leader of your own life. You make decisions constantly that shape your career, your relationships, and your well-being. Think about your own decision-making process, especially under stress. When you receive a frustrating email, when a project at work hits an unexpected snag, or when a disagreement arises at home, what is your default mode? Is it to react immediately, driven by the first flash of emotion? Or do you have a practice that allows you to hit the pause button? Consider how incorporating even a minute of deliberate stillness could transform your outcomes. Before you reply to that email, could you take 3 deep breaths? Before you address the problem with your team, could you step away from your desk for a 5-minute walk to clear your head? This isn't about wasting time. It's about investing a small amount of time to ensure your next action is intelligent and aligned with your goals, rather than being a mere reaction to external pressure. The stillness you cultivate becomes your most reliable advisor, the inner counsel that always urges clarity over confusion and purpose over impulse. Virtue, for the Stoics, was never an abstract concept to be debated in a lecture hall. It was the very definition of human excellence, the highest expression of our character. And they understood that this excellence of character is virtually impossible to achieve without a foundation of inner calm. You cannot act with wisdom if your mind is a storm of distraction and anxiety. It is incredibly difficult to summon courage when you are paralyzed by fear and internal chaos. Justice becomes blurred when your judgment is clouded by anger or bias. Every single virtue in the Stoic pantheon, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, requires a certain quality of mind to practice effectively. That quality is stillness. It is the clear, calm lake that allows you to see reality reflected accurately, rather than the choppy, turbulent waters that distort everything into a frightening and confusing mess. A tranquil mind is not a luxury for the virtuous life. It is its absolute prerequisite. Marcus Aurelius, in his constant quest to rule both an empire and himself, continually linked this internal state to right action. He wrote to himself, The mind in itself has no needs except for those it creates itself. Is it undisturbed? Then it is as it should be. This simple question, is it undisturbed, was his barometer for whether he was fit to make a decision or interact with others. He knew that an agitated mind creates needs where there are none. The need to be right, the need to retaliate, the need to control others. A still mind, in contrast, is self-sufficient. It can see what is actually required in any given situation because it is not projecting its own turmoil onto it. From this place of calm self-possession, acting justly becomes a natural extension of seeing clearly. You are no longer acting to serve your own bruised ego or to quiet your own anxieties. You are acting from a genuine understanding of what the situation itself demands. We can see this connection play out in the most ordinary moments of our daily lives. Imagine you're exhausted after a long day, and your child deliberately spills a drink on the floor just as you finished cleaning. The automatic, untrained response is a flash of hot anger, a sharp word, a reaction that comes from a place of frustration and disrupted expectation. There is no virtue in that reaction. It is pure, unfiltered emotional turbulence. Now imagine the same scenario, but you have cultivated a practice of stillness. The spill happens. You feel the initial surge of irritation, but you have created a tiny space between that feeling and your response. In that space, you access your stillness. You remember that your virtue, your patience, your temperance is being tested. From that calm center, your response shifts entirely. Instead of anger, you might take a slow breath, see the accident for what it is, a minor mess, not a personal affront, and calmly say, "That's okay, let's clean it up together." The action of cleaning the spill is the same, but the character behind it is utterly transformed. One response damages the relationship and teaches a lesson in anger. The other strengthens the bond and models grace under pressure. The virtue was made possible by the stillness. This interplay is perhaps most evident in the practice of courage. We often mistake courage for the absence of fear, but Stoicism teaches that true courage is action taken in spite of fear. And to act while afraid, you need a profound inner anchor. Fear is a whirlwind that seeks to pull you off course. Stillness is the weight that keeps you grounded. A soldier charging into battle isn't feeling no fear. They are absolutely terrified. Their courage is in the ability to manage that terror, to keep it from hijacking their training and their duty. That management is a form of mental stillness amidst the chaos. It's the same for someone speaking up against an injustice in a meeting, even when their voice is shaking. The fear of social disapproval is real and powerful. The courage to speak anyway comes from a still point within that values integrity over comfort, a point that can only be accessed if the mental noise of anxiety is not allowed to dominate. So I want to invite you to turn this lens inward for a moment. Look at the core Stoic virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Which one feels most challenging for you to embody in your daily life? Is it patience, a subset of temperance, that you struggle with when you're stuck in traffic or dealing with bureaucracy? Is it courage to have that difficult conversation you've been avoiding? Or is it justice to see a situation from another person's perspective without the filter of your own bias? Now trace that challenge back to its source. How often is your failure to act virtuously in that area preceded by a loss of your inner stillness? You lose patience because you are mentally rushing, already 5 steps ahead instead of being present with the current minor delay. You avoid the conversation because your mind is spinning with catastrophic predictions of what might go wrong, a clear absence of the calm required for courage. You fail to see another's perspective because your mind is too busy defending your own position to be still enough to listen. Identifying this link is the first step toward strengthening both your virtue and your stillness simultaneously. for they are not two separate pursuits, but two sides of the same coin, the lifelong project of building an excellent character. Think about the last time you were stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, running late for an important meeting, or the day a sudden downpour ruined your meticulously planned outdoor event. In those moments, what was your internal reaction? For most of us, it's a surge of frustration, a mental fight against the reality of the situation. We white-knuckle the steering wheel, we curse the weather, we expend enormous amounts of emotional energy resisting something that has already happened and is utterly beyond our control. This resistance is the source of so much of our daily suffering. But what if there was another way? The Stoics proposed a radical shift in perspective, that our path to resilience and peace doesn't lie in changing the world to fit our desires, but in changing our desires to fit the world. This is the profound practice of Stoic acceptance, and it begins not with surrender, but with a simple, clear-eyed assessment of reality. This practice finds its most beautiful expression in the concept of amor fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. This is the Stoic ideal of not merely tolerating or grudgingly accepting what happens, but actively embracing it. It's the decision to see every event, especially the obstacles and setbacks, as necessary and even beneficial for your growth. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, though he didn't use the phrase, embodied this when he wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." The obstacle itself becomes the fuel. This isn't a naive, Pollyanna-ish positivity that pretends everything is wonderful. It's a robust, courageous philosophy that looks directly at hardship and says, "This is what has happened. This is the raw material I have been given. How can I use it to build my character? How can this very thing become a part of my strength?" It transforms you from a passive victim of circumstance into an active artist of your own life, using all events, good and bad, as your medium. The foundational truth of this entire approach was laid out with stunning clarity by Epictetus, who began his central teaching with this very idea. He said, "Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control and some things are not." He then goes even further, explaining that our suffering begins the moment we forget this distinction and invest our happiness in trying to control the uncontrollable. The traffic jam, the weather, another person's opinion, a past mistake, these are all firmly in the category of things outside our control. Our frustration is a signal that we are at war with reality itself, a war we are guaranteed to lose every single time. Acceptance, then, is not passivity. It is the strategic decision to cease a futile battle. It is the act of withdrawing your energy from a fight you cannot win and redirecting it entirely toward the one thing you can always control, your response. As Epictetus put it, don't seek for everything to happen as you wish, but rather wish for everything to happen as it actually does happen. Then your life will flow well. We can see this principle in action at the highest levels of human performance. Consider a world-class athlete like a professional runner who suffers a serious injury mid-season. The reality of the torn ligament or the stress fracture is absolute and unchangeable. They cannot wish it away. The athlete who resists this reality, who rails against the injustice, falls into despair, and refuses to follow the rehab protocol, will not only fail to heal but will also compound their suffering with bitterness. The athlete who practices Stoic acceptance, however, makes a different choice. They fully accept the diagnosis. They embrace the fate of the injury amor fati. This acceptance is what allows them to ask the empowering question, given that this has happened, what is the best possible response? This mindset transforms the forced rest into an opportunity to focus on upper body strength, to study race footage, to develop mental fortitude. The setback becomes, paradoxically, a necessary part of their journey to becoming a more complete and resilient competitor. They use the obstacle as fuel, emerging not just healed but stronger than before. This transformative power of acceptance is available to you in your own life, right now, and it starts with the smallest of daily irritations. The next time you find yourself in that traffic jam, instead of fighting it, try a different approach. First, acknowledge the reality. I am in traffic, I will be late. This is a simple statement of fact, free from emotional judgment. Next, reclaim your power by asking the Stoic question. Since I cannot change the traffic, what can I control in this situation? You can control your breathing. You can control whether you use this time to listen to an audiobook or podcast you enjoy. You can control your response by calling ahead to apologize for your delay. The situation hasn't changed, but your entire experience of it has transformed from one of frustration and helplessness to one of calm agency. You have moved from resisting reality to working with it. So I want to invite you to a small experiment in applied philosophy today. Identify one unavoidable situation in your life that you typically meet with resistance. It could be a tedious household chore you always put off, a mandatory meeting you find unproductive, or even the behavior of a difficult family member that you cannot change. Today, make a conscious decision to approach this situation not with grudging tolerance, but with active, graceful acceptance. Don't just endure it, seek to embrace it as part of your fate in this moment. As you do, pay close attention to what shifts inside you. Notice how the mental energy you usually waste on resistance becomes available for something else, perhaps for patience, for observation, or even for a quiet sense of peace. This is the quiet power of Stoic acceptance. It doesn't change the world around you, but it changes your entire world by returning to you the one thing that was always yours, your sovereign ability to choose your response. There is a unique kind of quiet that can only be found under a canopy of stars, or in the deep silence of an ancient forest, or while watching the relentless, rhythmic crash of ocean waves against the shore. In these moments, something in us settles. The constant internal monologue of our worries and plans seems to soften, replaced by a simpler, more expansive awareness. The Stoics didn't just appreciate this feeling, they recognized it as one of the most powerful gateways to the inner stillness they sought. For them, nature was not merely a pleasant escape from the busyness of human affairs. It was the ultimate teacher, a living mirror reflecting the principles of reason, impermanence, and cosmic order that they strive to embody within themselves. By consciously contemplating the natural world, they could realign their perspective, shrinking their ego and its endless demands down to its proper, humble size against the vast backdrop of the universe. This practice of finding peace through cosmic perspective is woven throughout the writings of Marcus Aurelius. He constantly reminded himself to look beyond the narrow confines of his own life and see his place in the grand scheme of existence. He would write, "In the mind of one who is chastened and purified you will find no foulness nor any sore spot. When his time comes, his life will not be cut short like an actor's part that is broken off before the play is done." In this, he is drawing a direct parallel to the cycles of nature, seasons changing, plants growing and dying, stars burning for eons. His life, with all its imperial power and immense burden, was just one small, natural process within a much larger whole. This wasn't a depressing thought for him, it was a liberating one. By observing how a leaf falls from a tree without protest, or how a river continues to flow around obstacles, he could learn the art of acceptance. His personal struggles, when held up against the patient, enduring rhythm of nature, lost their sharp edge of urgency and began to feel more like passing weather patterns in the grand climate of a life. Seneca, in his letters, often pointed to the simplicity and self-sufficient order of the natural world as a model for human tranquility. He observed how animals live entirely in the present, free from the anxieties of past and future that so torment humanity. He wrote, "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. This is a reason for ensuring that nothing ever takes us by surprise." We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality instead of only the usual course of events. While this advice is about mental preparation, he finds his metaphor in nature. He is urging us to be like the sailor who studies the sky and the currents, not to live in fear of the storm, but to navigate it with skill and acceptance when it inevitably arrives. The peace found in natural simplicity for Seneca was this state of readiness and harmony with the way things are, not the way we wish them to be. We can integrate this ancient Stoic weapon into our modern lives with beautiful simplicity. You don't need to undertake a week-long wilderness expedition, though that can be profound. The practice can begin in your own backyard or a local park. The next time you feel the tight coil of anxiety or the buzz of distractedness, make a conscious choice to step outside. Leave your phone behind. Your only task is to observe. Find a single tree and really look at it. Notice the texture of its bark, the way its leaves move in the wind, the intricate network of its branches against the sky. Follow the path of a single cloud as it slowly drifts and changes shape. Or, if you can, find a place away from city lights on a clear night and simply look up. Gaze at the stars, and if you know any constellations, trace them out. This act of stargazing is perhaps the most direct route to the Stoic cosmic perspective. You are literally looking back in time, seeing light that has traveled for thousands of years to reach your eyes. In the face of such vastness and ancient light, the meeting you were worried about tomorrow, or the minor disagreement you had yesterday, cannot help but be seen in its true proportion. They are not insignificant, but they are temporary, small events in a breathtakingly large and enduring universe. So I want to extend a challenge to you, one that costs nothing but a little time. Sometime in the next 48 hours, I want you to intentionally schedule 20 minutes of what the Stoics would call natural contemplation. Go for a walk without a destination. Sit on a bench and watch the world go by. If you can't get outside, even looking out a window at the sky can serve. As you do this, pay close attention to the shift in your mental state. Does the frantic pace of your thoughts begin to slow down to match the rhythm of your footsteps or your breathing? Do the problems that felt monolithic an hour ago start to seem more manageable, more fluid? Make a mental note of this change. This is not an escape from your responsibilities. It is a recalibration of your soul. You are not hiding from the world. You are connecting with the very source of its order, reminding yourself that you are a part of nature, not separate from it, and that the same quiet strength that guides the planets and grows the trees is available within you, waiting to be accessed through simple, purposeful observation. How much of your mental energy is spent each day worrying about what other people might be thinking of you? That presentation you gave, the outfit you wore, the comment you made in a meeting. We replay these moments, trying to decipher the judgments of others, as if our own self-worth depends on their verdict. This hunger for approval and deep fear of criticism is one of the most common and draining sources of anxiety in modern life. We give away our inner peace, piece by piece, to people whose opinions are as fleeting and changeable as the weather. The Stoics identified this vulnerability centuries ago and developed a powerful defense against it, a mental shield forged from the unshakable understanding that the opinions of others belong squarely in the category of things beyond our control and are therefore unworthy of disturbing our tranquility. This core Stoic teaching is delivered with characteristic bluntness by Epictetus, who himself endured the harsh judgments of being a slave. He draws a brilliant distinction to make his point. He said, if someone turned your body over to just any person who happened to meet you, you would be furious. But aren't you ashamed that you turn over your own mind to anyone who happens to insult you, allowing it to be troubled and bewildered? This is a profound reframing. We would never hand a stranger the keys to our house and then be surprised when they ransack it, yet we do this with our minds every single day. We hand our mental state over to a critical colleague, a random internet commenter, or even a perceived slight from a friend, and then we are shocked to find our inner peace has been ransacked. The Stoic solution is not to become arrogant or dismissive of everyone, but to become the sole gatekeeper of your own mind. You decide what enters and what gets to stay. The opinion of another is merely an external event, a sound in the air or marks on a screen. It only gains power, it only becomes an insult or praise when you internally consent to label it as such and grant it the authority to affect your state of being. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most judged man on earth during his reign, constantly reinforced this idea in his private meditations. He wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." He's pointing out this fundamental human contradiction. We are the center of our own universe, yet we outsource our self-assessment to an audience that is largely preoccupied with themselves. He then offers the logical conclusion, asking how much time he gains who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks, but only at what he does himself to make it just and holy. His use of the word gains is so telling. When you stop constantly monitoring the external opinions of others, you don't lose anything. You gain an enormous amount of time, focus, and mental energy that can now be directed toward the only project that truly matters, living according to your own principles. He saw the praise and blame of the masses as utterly insignificant in the long arc of a life well lived, mere chatter that fades into nothingness. We can see this Stoic shield deployed with incredible skill by many public figures who operate under the relentless glare of modern criticism. Consider a professional athlete after a devastating loss. The sports talk shows, social media, and newspapers are filled with hot takes about their performance, their heart, their future. The athlete who internalizes every critique will be paralyzed, their confidence shattered. The one who practices a Stoic approach understands that the external noise is not within their control. They can acknowledge the factual outcome of the game, the loss, and use it to improve their skills, which they can control, but the opinions of the talking heads, they are irrelevant data points. The same principle applies to artists, entrepreneurs, and anyone who puts their work into the world. They must learn to separate useful, constructive feedback, which can be acted upon, from mere opinion and judgment, which must be allowed to pass by like a ship on the horizon, noticed but not boarded. Now bring this concept into the light of your own life. What is the one opinion that you find yourself worrying about, the one whose power you feel you need to dismantle? Is it the perception of a particular family member whose approval you've always sought? Is it the judgment of a manager whose respect you crave? Or perhaps it's the anonymous, collective opinion of your social media followers, where a drop in likes feels like a personal rejection. Identify it clearly. Now apply the Stoic test. Is this person's opinion something you can directly control? Can you force them to think well of you? The honest answer is no. You can act with integrity, you can be kind, you can do excellent work, all things within your control, but their final judgment is theirs alone to make. The practice of releasing it begins with this acceptance. The next time you feel that anxious pull, that worry about their opinion, consciously hand it back to them. Say to yourself, that is their property, not mine. My property is my character and my actions, and I will tend to that. This mental gesture of release is how you reclaim your stillness and build an inner citadel that no external opinion can ever breach. Consider for a moment that you carry with you at all times a built-in reset button for your nervous system. It requires no special equipment, it's completely free, and it's available to you whether you're sitting in a tense business meeting, standing in a crowded line, or lying awake in bed at 3 in the morning. This tool is your breath. It is the most immediate and direct connection we have to our present moment experience and our internal state. The Stoics, ever the practical philosophers, understood this profound link intuitively. While they didn't use the modern term mindful breathing, their writings are filled with the recognition that mastering the rhythm of our breath is a fundamental step toward mastering the turbulence of our emotions. In the gap between a triggering event and our habitual reaction, the breath offers a space, a sacred pause where we can reclaim our power to choose a response aligned with our character, rather than being hijacked by a momentary impulse. This connection between respiration and emotion is not just philosophical, it's physiological. When we become stressed or anxious, our sympathetic nervous system kicks in, our breath becomes shallow and rapid, and our body prepares for fight or flight. But this process works in reverse too. By consciously taking control of our breathing, by slowing it down, deepening it, we can actively signal to our body that the emergency is over. We engage the parasympathetic nervous system, which lowers our heart rate, reduces blood pressure, and creates a sense of calm. This is the biological genius behind the Stoic advice. The Roman philosopher Seneca, who frequently grappled with anger and anxiety, touched on this powerful mechanism. He observed, "The mind must be given relaxation. It will rise improved and sharper after a little break." Just as rich fields must not be forced, for they will quickly lose their fertility if never given a rest, so constant work will break the power of the mind. While he doesn't explicitly say, breathe, the concept of a little break is the essence of the practice. A single, conscious minute of deep breathing is that mental relaxation, that deliberate break that allows the mind to rise improved and sharper, ready to engage with the world from a place of strength rather than reactivity. We can see the practical application of this principle in some of the most high-pressure environments imaginable. Elite military units, for instance, train extensively in tactical breathing techniques. Before entering a dangerous situation or in the aftermath of a firefight, soldiers are taught to use a method like box breathing, inhaling for a count of 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, and holding again for 4. This isn't just to pass the time, it's a critical tool to maintain cognitive function under extreme stress, to prevent panic from clouding judgment, and to ensure that their actions remain deliberate and precise. Similarly, surgeons performing intricate operations will often use their breath as an anchor during moments of complication, creating a moment of still focus before making a critical incision. In these life or death scenarios, the breath isn't a spiritual luxury, it's a tactical weapon against chaos. It is the ultimate tool for creating that crucial space between stimulus and response that the Stoics valued above all else. Integrating this ancient Stoic weapon into your own modern life couldn't be simpler. You don't need a quiet room or 30 minutes of meditation. The next time you feel that familiar surge of overwhelm, when your heart starts to pound after a frustrating email or your mind begins to race with worry, that is your cue. That is the moment to deploy your breath. Try this. Stop whatever you are doing. Sit up straight if you can, or simply settle into your chair. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Now place your full attention on the physical sensation of the air moving in and out of your body. Don't try to force it, just observe it. Then begin to gently deepen your inhalations and lengthen your exhalations. You might even try a simple count. Breathe in slowly for a count of 4 and breathe out even more slowly for a count of 6. That longer exhale is particularly powerful for activating that calming parasympathetic response. Do this for just 1 minute. For those 60 seconds, your only job in the entire world is to tend to your breath. Every time your mind wanders to the problem, and it will gently guide it back to the anchor of your next inhalation. No scolding, no frustration, just a quiet return. So I extend a direct and immediate challenge to you. The very next time you feel that spike of stress, that tightening in your chest, or that swirl of anxious thoughts, I want you to remember that you hold the tool to change it. Do not wait. Do not tell yourself you will do it later. In that very moment, give yourself the gift of 1 single minute. Pause your scrolling, mute your conversation, step away from your desk if you have to. Invest 60 seconds in the most important project you will ever work on, your own inner peace. Use your breath to carve out a sanctuary of stillness amidst the noise. Notice what happens. Does the problem itself change? Maybe not, but you will have changed your relationship to it. You will have moved from being a reactor to being a responder, and in that small but monumental shift, you will have taken a definitive step toward wielding stillness not as a theory, but as a daily, practical weapon for a more resilient life. Look around at any public space today, and you'll see a familiar sight: faces bathed in the cool glow of screens, thumbs scrolling endlessly, a collective posture of digital absorption. Our technology offers a world of connection and information, yet it simultaneously creates a profound crisis of attention and peace. The very devices designed to bring the world closer often push us further from ourselves, fragmenting our focus and constantly pulling us out of the present moment. In this environment of perpetual interruption and information overload, the ancient Stoic quest for stillness isn't just a philosophical ideal. It becomes an essential act of self-preservation. The chaos is no longer just outside our window. It's in our pockets, on our wrists, and beckoning from every flat surface in our homes. This makes the disciplined application of Stoic principles not merely helpful, but absolutely critical for maintaining any semblance of mental clarity and inner sovereignty in the 21st century. The core Stoic concept of the dichotomy of control provides the perfect framework for navigating this digital landscape. Epictetus, whose wisdom feels startlingly modern, offered a simple but profound instruction that cuts to the heart of our digital anxieties. He said, "If you are distracted by external noise, it is not the noise itself that troubles you, but your own judgment about it, and you can suspend that judgment at any moment." Now translate external noise for our time. It is the relentless ping of a notification, the seductive red badge on an app icon, the endless scroll of a news feed algorithmically designed to provoke outrage or envy. Epictetus isn't saying these things don't exist. He's pointing out that their power to disturb us is not inherent. It is a power we grant them through our own judgment, our decision that this notification is urgent, that this social update requires our immediate attention, that this piece of news deserves our emotional investment. The practice of digital stillness, then, begins with the conscious suspension of that automatic judgment. It is the mental muscle that allows you to hear the ping but not feel compelled by it, to see the notification but decide it can wait, to recognize the pull of the scroll and consciously choose to look away. This philosophical foundation empowers practical action. One of the most effective modern applications of Stoicism is the practice of digital minimalism and intentional boundary setting. This isn't about rejecting technology outright, which is neither practical nor virtuous. It's about applying Stoic detachment to our digital consumption, treating our devices as tools we use with purpose rather than as slot machines we mindlessly feed our attention to. This looks like scheduling specific, limited times to check email and social media rather than leaving them as open tabs on the browser of your life, constantly pulling your focus. It means turning off nearly all non-essential notifications, reclaiming your attention from the whims of every app developer who wants a piece of it. For many, it involves creating sacred, screen-free zones and times, perhaps the first hour of the morning or the last hour before bed, or the dinner table where phones are not welcome guests. These boundaries are not restrictions, they are liberations. They are the modern equivalent of building your inner citadel, brick by digital brick, creating a space where your mind can function according to your own priorities, not the designed interruptions of 1,000 engineers in Silicon Valley. Consider the tangible impact of this approach. Without these boundaries, a typical workday can become a fractured series of reactions. You sit down to write a report, and a Slack message pulls you into a 15-minute sidebar. You return to the report, and a news alert about a political scandal hijacks your emotional state for the next half hour. You try to refocus, but the buzz of your phone with a friend's social media post sends you down a rabbit hole of vacation envy. At the end of the day, you feel exhausted and busy, yet you have a nagging sense of having accomplished very little of actual importance. This is the exact opposite of Stoic virtue. It is a life lived in reaction to externals. Now imagine the same day with Stoic digital boundaries. The notifications are off. You have scheduled time for messages and email for later in the afternoon. You work on the report in a focused block, your mind clear and undisturbed. The world's events are still happening, but you are not allowing them to happen to you every second of the day. You engage with them on your terms, from a place of centered choice rather than compulsive reaction. The same 24 hours become infinitely more productive and peaceful, not because the world changed, but because you changed your relationship to it. This brings us to a pivotal point of self-inquiry, a chance to apply this Stoic lens directly to your own life. I want you to pause and take an honest inventory of your digital habits. Don't do this with judgment, but with the curious, observational mindset of a Stoic examining an impression. Where does your technology use feel intentional and empowering, and where does it feel compulsive and draining? Which app or platform most frequently steals your stillness, leaving you feeling agitated, anxious, or comparing yourself to others? Is it the endless scroll of Instagram, the outrage engine of Twitter, the constant professional performance of LinkedIn, or the bottomless well of YouTube recommendations? Identify the single biggest digital leak in your reservoir of mental energy. Now, the Stoic question is not, how can I eliminate this, but what is one small, firm boundary I can set with this technology to reclaim my autonomy? Your action doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be as simple as deleting the app from your phone and only accessing it on your computer. It could be turning off all notifications for it. It could be committing to a 24-hour digital Sabbath from it once a week. The specific action is less important than the conscious intent behind it, the reaffirmation that your inner peace is more valuable than any piece of information or hit of social validation, and that you are the one who gets to decide what enters the sacred space of your attention. There is a profound and often misunderstood difference between loneliness and chosen solitude. One is a state of lack, a feeling of disconnection that we instinctively avoid. The other is a state of power, a conscious decision to step away from the crowd in order to reconnect with the one person whose opinion truly shapes your world, yourself. In our hyper-social world, we often treat time alone as a punishment or a sign of social failure. something to be filled with background noise and digital distractions. But the Stoics reframed this completely. For them, periodic withdrawal wasn't a symptom of antisocial behavior. It was a strategic necessity for resilience, a non-negotiable appointment for mental and spiritual maintenance. It is in these quiet moments, free from the influence and expectations of others, that we rebuild our inner fortitude and remember who we are when no one is watching. The Roman philosopher Seneca, a man deeply embedded in the chaotic political and social life of ancient Rome, was a passionate advocate for this practice of intentional retreat. In his moral letters to his friend Lucilius, he didn't recommend fleeing society entirely, but rather building a regular habit of stepping back from it. He wrote, "You must withdraw into yourself as much as you can, associate with people who are likely to improve you, welcome those whom you are capable of improving." Notice the order here. Withdrawal comes first. The retreat into the self is the foundational practice that makes our social interactions more meaningful and virtuous. Seneca understood that if we are constantly surrounded by the noise of other people's opinions, agendas, and energies, we never get a chance to hear our own inner voice. We risk becoming echoes of the crowd rather than authors of our own character. He saw solitude as the necessary counterbalance to public life. The quiet workshop where we repair the dings and dents our spirit acquires in the busy marketplace of daily interaction. This theme of finding strength in retreat is echoed powerfully by Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. In the private pages of his journal, a man who had virtually no physical solitude found it by retreating into his own mind. He famously wrote, "People seek retreats for themselves in the country, by the sea, or in the mountains. You are very much in the habit of yearning for those things. But this is entirely the trait of a common person, for you have the power to retreat into yourself at any time you wish." For Marcus, the ultimate citadel wasn't a physical place, it was a state of mind. His ability to close his eyes to the chaos of the military camp and find a quiet space within himself was his greatest weapon against stress and despair. This inner retreat allowed him to consult his own reason, to check his impulses against his virtues, and to emerge from those moments of stillness with a clarity and resolve that no external circumstance could shake. His solitude was an act of reclamation, a way of gathering all his scattered attention and focusing it like a laser on the task of living with integrity. History offers us countless powerful examples of individuals who harnessed this Stoic principle to achieve remarkable clarity and produce enduring work. While not a Stoic in the classical sense, the American transcendentalist Henry David Thoreau conducted a famous 2-year experiment in voluntary solitude at Walden Pond. His goal was strikingly Stoic: to front only the essential facts of life, to live deliberately, and to see if he could learn what nature had to teach without the distraction of society's chatter. In his solitude, he wasn't running away from life. He was immersing himself in it more deeply, stripping away the superfluous to understand the core of his own existence. His time alone was a masterclass in self-reliance and observation, resulting in a body of work that continues to inspire people to question their own patterns and priorities. Similarly, the brilliant scientist and inventor Nikola Tesla was known for his intense periods of isolation, during which he would retreat into his own mind to visualize complex electromagnetic machines in perfect, working detail before ever drawing a blueprint. His solitude was the incubator for his genius, the silent space where his most innovative ideas could come to life without interruption. The practical application for us doesn't require a cabin in the woods or a laboratory. It begins with the simple, radical act of scheduling an appointment with yourself, and treating it with the same respect you would a meeting with your most important client. This isn't about scrolling through your phone alone on the couch. That is still consumption. This is about purposeful disconnection to enable reconnection with your own thoughts. It could be a 20-minute morning walk without headphones, allowing your mind to wander and process instead of being fed more information. It could be sitting in a quiet room with a journal for 10 minutes before bed, not to write a to-do list, but to untangle the impressions of the day as the Stoics did. It could be a long drive in silence, using the time to think through a problem or simply to let your mind rest from the constant demand to perform. I want to challenge you to a small but potentially transformative experiment this week. Look at your calendar and block out just 30 minutes for a session of deliberate solitude. Inform anyone who needs to know that you will be unavailable. Go to a park, a library, or simply a quiet corner of your home. Leave your devices behind, or at the very least, turn them completely off. For that half hour, your only task is to be present with yourself. You might be surprised at the initial discomfort, the itch to check for notifications, the feeling that you should be doing something more productive. Observe that feeling without judgment and then let it pass. See what thoughts arise when you are not constantly distracting yourself from them. Pay attention to how you feel at the end of those 30 minutes. Do you feel more centered, more clear, perhaps a little more patient? This is the power of withdrawal in action. It is not an escape from your life, but a deeper immersion into its source, providing the quiet clarity needed to navigate the noise of the world with renewed resilience and self-possession. True freedom has very little to do with your physical location or your material possessions, and everything to do with the sovereignty of your own mind. The Stoics arrived at this radical conclusion centuries ago, proposing that a man in chains could possess a liberty more complete than an emperor surrounded by every luxury, if that emperor was a slave to his own passions, fears, and desires. This is because the most common form of imprisonment is not the one with physical bars. It is the self-constructed cage of believing that our happiness and peace are held hostage by people, events, and outcomes that we ultimately cannot control. We chain ourselves to these externals, handing over the keys to our inner state, and then wonder why we so often feel trapped, anxious, and powerless. The practice of stillness is the precise tool for breaking these mental chains. It is the deliberate cultivation of an inner citadel so strong that no external event, be it praise, criticism, gain, or loss, can force its way in and command your emotional response without your conscious permission. This foundational Stoic truth is perfectly captured by Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and became one of history's greatest teachers on the nature of true freedom. He draws a powerful distinction that gets to the very heart of the matter, stating, "He is free who lives as he wishes, who cannot be forced, obstructed, or compelled, whose impulses are unhindered, who attains his desires and doesn't fall into what he would avoid." At first, this might sound like a description of a powerful king, but Epictetus immediately clarifies that this person is not free if they are chained to externals. He continues, "No one is free who is a slave to their own passions, or to another's opinion, or to their own desire for wealth and status." His point is devastatingly simple. If your mood is determined by the stock market, your sense of worth by the number of likes on a post, or your peace by the weather, then you are not free. You are a marionette, and the external world holds all the strings. Stillness is the act of cutting those strings. It is the conscious decision to find your stability, your worth, and your peace within the boundaries of your own character and judgments, making you truly free because you are no longer dependent on the chaotic and unpredictable world to provide you with a reason to be okay. We can find some of the most profound examples of this principle in the most physically restricted circumstances imaginable. Consider the experiences of prisoners of war or those held in solitary confinement, individuals like James Stockdale or Viktor Frankl, who consciously employed Stoic and similar philosophical practices. Their bodies were utterly confined, subject to the absolute control of their captors. They were deprived of every conventional freedom, movement, choice, comfort, and often even hope of release. Yet, in these brutal conditions, many discovered a liberating truth. They realized that while their captors could control their physical environment, inflict pain, and deliver insults, they could not control their inner world unless they surrendered it. They practiced a form of mental stillness, retreating into their minds to recite poetry, plan future lectures, or simply observe their suffering with a detached curiosity. In doing so, they performed the ultimate act of defiance. They remained free where it mattered most. Their inner selves remained unviolated, a territory their captors could not enter. This is the ultimate expression of the Stoic ideal that freedom is not the absence of obstacles, but the power to choose our response to them, a power that can never be taken away, only surrendered. This same power is available to you in your own life, though your cages may look far different. You are likely not behind physical bars, but you might be trapped in a job you feel you cannot leave because of the paycheck, enslaved to the opinion of a parent you can never seem to please, or imprisoned by the relentless pursuit of a lifestyle that always seems one purchase out of reach. The mechanism is identical. You have linked your inner peace to an external condition. I will be happy when I get the promotion. I will be worthy when they finally approve of me. I will be secure when I have X amount in the bank. Each of these statements is a voluntary chain. The practice of stillness allows you to stop, to breathe, and to question the very link itself. Is it true? Must your happiness really wait for that promotion? Is your worth truly dependent on another's opinion? This questioning is the beginning of your own declaration of independence. So I want to ask you a direct and personal question. What is the one external thing to which you have unconsciously chained your sense of freedom and peace? Is it your financial status, where a dip in your savings account sends you into a spiral of anxiety about the future? Is it a specific relationship where your entire emotional well-being seems to hinge on the mood or approval of another person? Or is it a particular outcome you are desperate to achieve, a goal that has become so fused with your identity that the thought of failing to reach it feels like a personal annihilation? Identify that chain. Now imagine applying the weapon of stillness to it. Imagine facing the potential loss of that external thing. The money, the approval, the goal, and yet, through a profound inner calm, realizing that your core self, your ability to choose your character and your response, remains untouched and completely your own. That realization that you are the sole owner of your inner world is the moment the chain falls away. It is the moment you discover that you were never truly trapped to begin with. You are only holding the key in your hand, waiting to notice it was there. Consider how often your mind is pulled into a state of wanting a different situation, a newer possession, a higher status, or simply for things to be easier. This restless desire is like a constant background hum of dissatisfaction, a mental noise that makes stillness impossible because it keeps you focused on an imagined future where you will finally be content. Gratitude is the Stoic antidote to this perpetual wanting. It is the conscious and deliberate practice of shifting your attention from what you lack to what you already possess, effectively short-circuiting the cycle of desire and anchoring you firmly in the abundant reality of the present moment. This isn't about naive positivity. It's a strategic recalibration of your perception, a way of training your mind to see the wealth that already exists in your life, which in turn creates a profound and lasting sense of inner peace. The Stoics understood this connection between gratitude and tranquility deeply. Seneca, in his letters, frequently circled back to the idea that true wealth is not having more but wanting less. He argued that a peaceful mind is the natural result of this shift, writing, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." His solution was to actively practice appreciation for the simple, often overlooked foundations of a good life. He advised his friend Lucilius to regularly reflect on his blessings, not as a vague feeling, but as a concrete exercise. This practice of mentally cataloging one's good fortune, a warm bed, a meal, a friend, the ability to reason, was a direct method for cultivating contentment. By focusing the mind on what is present and good, it has less energy to expend on anxious projections about what might be missing tomorrow. Gratitude, in the Stoic sense, is therefore a form of mental discipline. It is the active choice to dwell on sufficiency rather than scarcity, and in doing so, it builds an inner fortress of satisfaction that external circumstances cannot easily breach. Marcus Aurelius, a man who commanded the entire Roman Empire, consistently began his private meditations with this same practice of thankful acknowledgement. He would write reminders to himself such as, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." This wasn't a fluffy self-help tip for him. It was an essential grounding ritual before facing the immense pressures of his day, the political schemes, the military threats, the endless petitions. He would first anchor himself in a baseline of gratitude for the fundamental facts of his existence. This practice served as his emotional and psychological foundation. It ensured that his sense of well-being was built on the unshakable ground of his own breath and consciousness, rather than the fragile and fluctuating ground of imperial success or failure. His gratitude was a daily declaration of independence from the whims of fortune, a way to ensure that his stillness originated from within, regardless of the storms raging outside. One of the most powerful and accessible ways to incorporate this ancient weapon into a modern life is through the practice of keeping a gratitude journal. This is the contemporary equivalent of the Stoics' nightly examination, tailored for cultivating a specific virtue. The process is simple but transformative. Each day, typically in the morning or evening, you take a few minutes to write down 3 to 5 specific things for which you are genuinely grateful. The key is in the specificity. Instead of writing "my family," you might write "the sound of my daughter's laughter this morning," or "the supportive text message my partner sent me today." This granular focus forces you to actively search for and savor positive moments, training your brain to scan for good rather than for threat or lack. Over time, this practice physically rewires neural pathways, making a default attitude of appreciation more automatic. The act of writing itself is crucial. It slows down the mind, makes the thoughts more concrete, and creates a tangible record you can return to on more difficult days. This journal becomes a personal arsenal of peace, a compiled list of evidence that your life, exactly as it is, contains immense value. I want to extend a direct invitation to you to experience this calming power for yourself right now. You don't need a special notebook or any preparation. Just take a moment to pause whatever you are doing. Let your eyes soften and take one deep, slow breath. Now ask yourself this simple question: what are 3 things I can be grateful for in this very moment? They do not need to be grand or profound. In fact, their simplicity often makes them more powerful. Perhaps it is the warmth of the cup of coffee in your hands, the fact that you have a device that allows you to listen to this content, the comfort of the chair you are sitting in, or the memory of a kind word someone offered you recently. As you identify each one, sit with it for just a few seconds. Don't just list it and move on. Feel the genuine appreciation for it spread through your chest. Notice what happens to your breathing, to the tension in your shoulders. There is a very good chance you will feel a subtle but distinct shift, a softening, a settling, a quieting of the mental noise. This is the sound of stillness arriving, not because your external problems have vanished, but because your internal focus has shifted from what is missing to what is already whole. Think about the last time you had a disagreement with someone you care about. Maybe it started with a careless comment, a misunderstood text message, or simply the accumulated fatigue of a long day. In that heated moment, communication breaks down. We stop listening to understand and start preparing our defense. We interrupt, we raise our voices, we say things we don't mean, all in a desperate attempt to be heard, yet achieving the exact opposite. This reactive cycle is where so many relationships fracture, not from a lack of love, but from a lack of stillness. The ancient Stoics, however, saw these interpersonal friction points not as inevitable disasters, but as training grounds for one of the highest forms of virtue. They understood that true strength in communication isn't about winning an argument. It's about mastering your own internal reactions so skillfully that you can transform a potential conflict into an opportunity for deeper connection. This entire approach rests on a profound insight from Epictetus, who cuts to the core of why arguments feel so personally injurious. He taught, remember, it is not he who gives abuse or blows who affronts, but the view we take of these things as insulting. Let that sink in for a moment. The sting of a partner's criticism or a colleague's dismissive tone doesn't actually reside in their words. The injury occurs the moment we internally consent to be injured by them, the moment we grant their words the power to define our emotional state. Our stillness, therefore, is the practice of withholding that consent. It is the conscious decision to create a small, crucial space between the provocation and our response, a space where we can choose our interpretation. Instead of hearing, "You never listen to me," as a brutal personal attack, a still mind might hear it as a clumsy, frustrated expression of a deeper need for connection. This shift in perception, made possible by that momentary pause, changes everything about what happens next. We can see this principle in action through the powerful practice of active listening, which is essentially applied Stoicism in a conversation. Active listening isn't just waiting for your turn to talk. It is the disciplined effort to fully comprehend the other person's perspective and emotional state before formulating your own reply. It means silencing your own internal monologue, the one that's already crafting a rebuttal, and giving your complete attention to the person in front of you. Your body language softens, you maintain eye contact, and you might even paraphrase what they've said to ensure you've understood them correctly. So what I'm hearing is that you felt overlooked when I started looking at my phone during dinner. This does not mean you agree with them. It means you are granting them the respect of being heard, which is often the very thing they are craving. This simple act of validation, born from inner stillness, is often enough to drain the tension from a conversation instantly. It escalates because it makes the other person feel seen, and a person who feels seen has far less need to fight to be heard. Now, imagine applying this to a classic relationship stressor. Your partner comes home from work visibly stressed and immediately criticizes the state of the kitchen. The automatic, reactive response is to become defensive. "I've been cleaning all day. Why don't you ever notice what I do around here?" This immediately launches both parties into a well-worn battle of grievances, where the original comment about a dirty dish becomes a proxy war for deeper, unspoken resentments. Now replay that scene with Stoic stillness. The criticism lands. You feel the familiar heat of defensiveness rise, but you consciously pause. You take one breath. You remember Epictetus. You have a choice about whether to feel affronted. Instead of firing back, you might say, "It sounds like you've had a really tough day. Tell me about it." By not taking the bait, by not consenting to the conflict, you have fundamentally changed the dynamic. You have addressed the root cause, their stress, rather than the superficial symptom, the comment about the kitchen. Your stillness becomes a calming force that interrupts the cycle of reaction and allows for a genuine, connective conversation to begin. This week, I want to challenge you to a simple but powerful experiment. Choose one conversation, just one, and make a conscious decision to enter it with the sole intention of practicing full, uninterrupted presence. It doesn't have to be a difficult talk. It could be a casual chat with a coworker or a check-in with your child. Your only goal for the duration of that interaction is to listen without planning your response. When the other person is speaking, give them your complete attention. Notice the urge to interrupt with your own story or advice, and instead let that urge pass. Ask a follow-up question to better understand their point of view. Pay attention not just to their words, but to their tone and body language. Afterwards, take a moment to reflect. How did this approach change the flow of the conversation? Did you learn something new? Did you feel more connected or less stressed? This is the practical magic of stillness in action. It transforms communication from a battle of egos into a bridge of understanding, proving that the most powerful thing we can often bring to a relationship is not a brilliant argument, but a quiet and truly open mind. How often do you find yourself watching the clock, feeling that familiar pressure as deadlines loom, and your to-do list seems to grow faster than you can check items off? This sensation of time scarcity is one of the defining anxieties of modern life, a constant background hum that tells us we are running out of minutes, hours, and days. We race from one task to the next, multitasking in a desperate attempt to squeeze more productivity from every moment, only to end the day feeling both exhausted and strangely unaccomplished, as if time itself is slipping through our fingers. The Stoics looked at this frantic struggle and offered a radically different perspective, one that turns our relationship with time on its head. They proposed that the feeling of not having enough time is not solved by moving faster, but by moving more deliberately. The secret to an expansive life isn't found in managing the clock, but in mastering the quality of our attention within each tick. This revolutionary idea is powerfully articulated by the Roman philosopher Seneca in his Moral Letters, where he tackles the paradox of time head-on. He observes, "We are not given a short life, but we make it short, and we are not ill-supplied, but wasteful of it." With this single sentence, Seneca shifts the entire problem from an external shortage to an internal failure of stewardship. His point is devastatingly accurate. We act as if time is scarce because we are so profligate with our attention, scattering it to the winds by dwelling on the unchangeable past or worrying about the unpredictable future. We are present in body but absent in mind, which means we are not truly inhabiting our lives as we live them. Stillness, in the Stoic sense, is the cure for this wastefulness. It is the trained ability to gather your scattered attention and pour it entirely into the single moment you are actually experiencing. When you do this, a minute of fully absorbed focus on a conversation, a task, or even a sip of coffee contains more life than an entire day spent distracted and mentally time traveling. You are not adding more hours to your life, but you are adding infinitely more life to your hours. We can see the practical truth of this in the difference between two ways of approaching the same activity. Imagine you decide to spend an hour reading a book. In one scenario, you are physically holding the book, but your mind is elsewhere. You're replaying an awkward conversation from yesterday, mentally drafting an email you need to send later, and checking your phone every few paragraphs. At the end of the hour, you have a vague sense of the plot but feel restless and unsatisfied. The time feels used up but not truly lived. Now, imagine the same hour spent reading with complete stillness. You create a quiet environment, you leave your phone in another room, and you consciously bring your attention back to the page every time it wanders. You become fully immersed in the narrative, visualizing the scenes, connecting with the characters. That same 60 minutes now feels rich, deep, and substantial. You emerge from it feeling replenished, not drained. The clock measured identical intervals, but your experience of time was completely different. One felt like a scarce resource that was consumed. The other felt like a spacious experience that was savored. This is the Stoic gift of stillness. It doesn't give you more time. It gives you a more profound experience of the time you already have. This shift from scarcity to abundance with time fundamentally changes how we engage with our daily work and leisure. The modern cult of productivity often pushes us to do more things in less time, championing speed and efficiency above all else. But the Stoic approach asks a different question. What if the goal isn't to do more, but to be more fully in what you are doing? A programmer fully absorbed in writing elegant code, a gardener completely lost in the feel of the soil, a teacher wholly present with a student's question. These states of flow are only possible when the mind is still and focused on the present task. In these states, time doesn't feel scarce, it feels irrelevant. The pressure of the clock dissolves because your engagement with the activity itself is so complete. This is the opposite of wasting time. This is the most efficient use of a human life because it is where we find meaning, mastery, and genuine satisfaction. The stillness allows us to exit the frantic race against the clock and step into a state of being where our actions and our awareness are unified. I want to invite you to conduct a small experiment in reclaiming your time through Stoic stillness. Sometime today, choose one routine activity that you normally rush through. It could be drinking your morning coffee, washing the dishes, walking to your car, or even eating a meal. Your mission is to perform this one activity with painstaking slowness and your complete, undivided attention. If you choose the coffee, don't drink it while scrolling through news headlines. Instead, just drink the coffee, feel the warmth of the mug in your hands, notice the aroma, taste the complex flavors on your tongue with each sip. When your mind inevitably drifts to your schedule or your worries, gently guide it back to the sensory experience of drinking. There is no goal other than to be entirely present for those few minutes. You will likely be astonished by two things. First, how challenging it is to keep your mind from fleeing the present moment. And second, how that simple, mundane activity can become unexpectedly interesting and even enjoyable when you give it your full attention. That feeling of expanded time, of a moment feeling rich and full instead of empty and rushed, is a direct experience of Stoic stillness. It is proof that the quality of your time is not dictated by the clock, but by the depth of your presence within it. The most profound transformations rarely begin with grand, sweeping gestures, but with the quiet, consistent application of small, daily rituals. It is in these seemingly minor moments, repeated day after day, that we forge the unshakable inner strength that defines true resilience. The Stoics understood that philosophy is not merely something to be studied, but something to be lived and practiced, woven into the very fabric of our ordinary routines. This is how stillness shifts from being an abstract concept to a tangible weapon by becoming a non-negotiable part of your daily architecture, a ritual that grounds you before the world has a chance to pull you off center. Marcus Aurelius, despite the colossal weight of leading an empire, knew that his day would be won or lost in its first moments. He set his intention before the chaos could set its agenda, writing in his meditations, When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. This wasn't a passive thought, it was an active ritual of reorientation. He was building his inner citadel before a single demand was placed upon him. This practice of beginning the day with stillness is a common thread among the most resilient and effective people, both historically and today. It's the executive who doesn't check their email for the first hour, but instead meditates or journals. It's the artist who starts with a quiet walk to clear the mental canvas. It's the parent who wakes 15 minutes earlier to sit in silence with a cup of tea, fortifying themselves with presence before the beautiful tumult of the family day begins. They treat this time not as a luxury, but as the essential foundation upon which everything else is built. The beauty of these rituals is that they are infinitely adaptable to your life and temperament. The goal is not to mimic someone else's routine, but to discover what creates a pocket of purposeful pause in your own world. A morning meditation, even for just 5 minutes, can be a powerful anchor. It's not about emptying your mind, but about observing your thoughts without getting swept away by them, training the muscle of detachment that you'll need when a real crisis hits later in the day. An evening reflection, a practice the Stoics called their nightly review, is another profound ritual. Taking just 5 minutes before bed to ask yourself Stoic questions: where did I act in alignment with my values today? Where did I let external noise disturb my peace? What is one thing I can release before sleep? Allows you to process the day's events, learn from them, and close the books mentally, preventing yesterday's anxieties from spilling into tomorrow. Even something as simple as mindful walking can become a moving meditation. On your commute or during a lunch break, you can practice leaving your phone in your pocket and instead directing your full attention to the sensation of your feet on the ground, the rhythm of your breath, and the world moving around you. This isn't wasted time, it's invested time, reclaiming a scattered mind and returning it to a state of unified focus. The key to making any of this stick is to start impossibly small and be fiercely consistent. The ambition to meditate for 30 minutes on day 1 is a recipe for failure. Instead, commit to just 60 seconds of focused breathing each morning. The barrier to entry is so low that you have no excuse to skip it, and that consistency is what builds the habit. After a week, those 60 seconds will feel natural, and you can gently expand the time. The ritual itself is less important than the unwavering commitment to showing up for it. It is the daily repetition that signals to your subconscious that your inner peace is a priority, carving out neural pathways that make stillness your default setting rather than a state you have to struggle to achieve. So here is your invitation to move from theory into practice, to begin building your own arsenal of daily stillness. Look at your life as it is right now and identify one single, small opportunity for a ritual. It could be that 60 seconds of breath before you check your phone in the morning. It could be turning your shower into a practice of sensation, focusing entirely on the feel of the water and the sound it makes, pulling your mind away from its endless planning. It could be dedicating your drive home to silence, using the time to decompress and transition from your professional role to your personal one. Choose just one. Commit to it for the next 7 days. Don't worry about doing it perfectly. Just focus on doing it consistently. Notice what happens. Do you feel a greater sense of space between you and your reactions? Does the day feel slightly less frantic? This is how you weaponize stillness, not in a single dramatic moment, but in 1,000 quiet ones, building a resilience so deeply ingrained that it becomes who you are, not just what you do. And so we arrive at the heart of the matter, the central thread that has woven its way through every story and every Stoic lesson we've explored. This journey hasn't been about discovering some secret knowledge locked away in ancient texts. It has been about remembering a power you have always possessed. The weapon of stillness is not forged in a distant land or reserved for a chosen few. It is patiently crafted in the quiet moments of your own day, through the deliberate choices you make in how you meet the world. It is the resilient core that emerges when we practice detachment from what we cannot control, when we anchor ourselves with unwavering presence in the current moment, and when we consciously build an inner fortitude that no external storm can ever breach. This is the profound, practical magic of Stoicism. It transforms philosophy from a theory to be debated into a toolkit to be used, a personal arsenal for navigating the beautiful, chaotic complexity of being human. What makes this ancient practice so breathtakingly relevant for our modern lives is its stunning accessibility. You do not need to retreat to a mountain cave or abandon your responsibilities to cultivate this strength. The raw materials are all around you, available in the very situations you might otherwise wish to avoid. That stressful commute becomes a training ground for patience. That difficult conversation becomes an opportunity to practice responding with calm instead of reacting with emotion. The endless stream of digital notifications becomes a chance to exercise your power of choice, to decide what deserves your attention and what does not. This transformative work happens right here in the middle of your ordinary, magnificent life. It begins not with a grand gesture, but with a single, conscious breath, a deliberate pause that creates the space for a wiser, more courageous version of yourself to step forward. The Stoic philosopher Seneca, who offered so much wisdom on turning adversity into advantage, leaves us with a final, powerful thought on where true peace is ultimately found. He reminds us, a mind that is anxious about the future is miserable. The mind that is prepared for anything, that has settled the fact that nothing belongs to us except the mind itself, and that even in our darkest hours, we can retreat into our own inner resources. This is the mind that achieves a peace that is not dependent on external circumstances, but is unshakable and profound. Let that idea settle within you. Your peace is not out there waiting for the world to become perfect. It is in here, a quiet sanctuary you can learn to access at any time, a stillness that becomes your greatest source of strength and your most resilient response to life itself. As we bring our exploration to a close, I want to turn the question back to you. Of all the principles we've discussed, from cognitive detachment and memento mori to the discipline of desire and the power of your breath, which one resonated most deeply? Which idea felt like a key waiting for a lock in your own life? Take a moment to sit with that, and then take the next step. How could you practice that single principle today in one small way? Perhaps it's pausing before you reply to a provocation, or taking 5 minutes for silent reflection tonight, or simply reminding yourself of what is truly within your control the next time you feel anxiety begin to rise. This is how the weapon is forged, one intentional choice at a time. If this journey into Stoic resilience has offered you a new perspective, then you're already part of a community seeking to live with more purpose and peace. If you'd like to continue this exploration, consider subscribing to this channel for more insights into using ancient wisdom to navigate modern challenges. And I would be truly honored to hear about your own experiences in the comments below. What does stillness mean to you? Share your story, because it is in sharing our practices and our struggles that we build not just individual resilience, but a community of support, learning from each other as we each learn to wield our own inner strength. Thank you for watching, and may you carry this stillness